Welcome to Saulcast. Today we're talking about Better Call Saul Season 6, Episode 13, Saul Gone. What was the name of the second to last episode, Adam?
Breaking Bad?
No, Waterworks.
Waterworks, right.
What's the acronym of Waterworks?
Walter White.
Acronym of Saul Gone?
Saul Goodman.
Yeah, WWSG.
Nice. I love all the word play and like name stuff that they do. Even just like Jim and Kim.
Yeah.
J, K. They're even, first of all, JK, just kidding.
Mm-hmm.
And also they're just sequential in the alphabet. And,
Oh, yeah.
They rhyme.
That never occurred to me.
Yeah.
The writers, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but the writers love to play with the titles, right? In the first season, every episode ends with an O, except for Alpine Shepherd Boy, because they couldn't get the rights to use the name Jello. Fring's back, 737 down over ABQ, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm Gil.
I'm Adam.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to start with, look, should we address the elephant in the room?
All right, fine.
This was the last episode ever of Better Call Saul.
I'm so sad about this.
Yeah, you know,
I'm happy because it was great.
Yeah.
It was like it was one of the best ever episodes. I mean, yeah, it's up there potentially as the best ever episode of anything.
Right.
And I've been saying that about every episode. Like the last 3 episodes of Better Call Saul, I've said that.
And with Breaking Bad, that had a great ending, I thought.
Yeah.
And they kind of followed a similar path where there was the big episode, Ozymandias. Did I say that?
Ozymandias.
Ozymandias.
Yeah. You say it sometimes it's like Ozymandias.
Yeah, I don't know how.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that word.
Yeah.
Even now, you just told me.
It's not even a word. I mean, who really knows what that is?
You know, from now on, I'm going to say Ozzy. And anyone watching, or listening, when I say Ozzy, I'm talking about
Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you had the big episode, and then you had a couple of sort of epilogue episodes.
Yeah.
Here we had
denouement.
There you go.
Yeah.
Which I still don't know what that means.
It's basically like an epilogue.
Okay.
It's like the calm after the storm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here I felt like we had 4 episodes of that.
Yeah.
So never have I felt more closure, or never have I felt so settled into an ending. So I think I'm more okay with this ending than I have been with possibly any ending that came before it.
It gave me more than I could have asked for, because it showed us so much that most shows would have skipped over, or most shows would have left to the imagination. It kind of, the last 3 episodes of this season are sort of like El Camino, basically, except if they felt more necessary.
There was a character arc.
There's more payoff to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was almost like I could have seen a world in which they said, okay, this is the finale, like episode 10, and everyone's like, wait, that's it? Like, where's like the rest? Or like, how does the rest of the story end? And then they say, okay, now we're like 1 year later, we're having like a few months later, like a special event of like 3 weeks in a row of like just Gene.
That's like Ricky Gervais, the original Office, and then every series he does, he'll usually have the finale, and it always leaves a little bit ambiguous. Then he does the Christmas special, wraps everything up. Here we got the Christmas special right after the ending.
Yeah, and it was perfect.
Yeah. And I'll say that I feel sad about it ending. I felt sadder at the beginning of the week. I think because we were trying so hard to celebrate it as a finale.
Yeah.
Like, we did the most we could for anybody listening and for ourselves to have that sense of celebration. So it definitely felt like an ending. I felt like we were at graduation.
Yeah.
But now, a few days later, having had some more time to sit with it, I feel excited. Part of me feels free, because the ride was awesome with Jimmy and Kim, but it was also unsettling and uncomfortable. And now they've finally gotten to a place where they're free, right? Jimmy's incarcerated,
but he's more free than he has been in like a decade.
Yeah. It's like the torture has stopped. We've gotten to the end of the ride. We're in as happy a place as you can be, and now I'm not in that dark place anymore.
Like Jimmy kind of stopped struggling against like the tides of life, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And on top of that, I think about what this means for us in terms of content we get to view, in terms of art we get to consume. Vince Gilligan, Peter Gould, Tom Schnauz, all the rest of the writers, they're now free to work on something else. And so it does also feel like I'm excited to see what comes next. And obviously, every great story leaves you wanting more. And I want more Saul. I want more Kim. And if I were a betting man, I would say that El Camino style, we're going to revisit, or maybe even another series. I bet we'll revisit this world again at some point.
Yeah.
But I'm not sitting here waiting for it. And in the meantime, I'm excited to just, what other stories can they tell?
Right. And if we're just thinking how this would play out in this universe, what are the chances that, let's say Kim and Saul are basically, Kim and Jimmy are basically together now, even though Jimmy, he's called himself James McGill.
Right.
Which I've never referred to him as James, but let's say Jimmy's in prison indefinitely and Kim is sticking by his side. What are the chances that that they don't work together to try to shorten his sentence?
Right.
Legitimately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
without, like, maybe they'll try to resist using like trickery and manipulation, but also how long can that last without them slipping back into it either?
Right. Well, we're going to talk about that toward the end of the podcast.
Right. I would say I don't think that they're going to revisit that part in the future, but I do think this universe isn't gone.
Yeah.
Maybe I think we might see more in this universe without any of these characters, but we'll see.
AMC just wiped a lot of sweat off their forehead. They're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, we don't have to do that now.
No, they're just saying, thank God that this universe is not gone.
Oh, yeah, we can continue milking it.
Yeah. The Saulcast boys said we could do another one.
Yeah,
it's fine. So, yeah, like I said, we'll definitely talk more about the ending itself. We'll talk more about where we see things going in our headcanon, where things would likely go. We'll talk about all of that. I want to start with, and you've already alluded to it a bit, but we gave our first impressions when we were feeling the hype and we just finished watching it. The emotions were still raw. Now you've been sitting with it for 4 days. How do you feel about the finale now, a few days later?
I think it's even better than I already thought it was. Upon rewatching it, the amount of thought that they put into everything is just off the charts, both in terms of referencing earlier things and having characters act in realistic ways and integrating the story and tying everything back to where everything started. That was done perfectly. And even down to simple things like transitions from one scene to the next, or the way they choose to show things visually in one scene or another. It's just so well done and so packed with meaning that you could really do an entire Saulcast episode about every freaking scene in this show.
Yeah, it reminds me, well, throughout this whole season, I have been trying to, in my head, understand what is so special about this show. And what differentiates it from other shows. And I was thinking back to my old career in finance. I used to make a lot of spreadsheets, financial models, and I would teach people how to make better financial models. And one of the things I told people is that at any point, I should be able to point to a tab in your spreadsheet or a specific cell or a formula and ask, why did you choose to put that there? Why did you choose to use that technique? And you should have an answer. Most people don't, and that's why you get a messy spreadsheet. It's hard to understand and hard to use.
Right. It's just, well, this is what other people did, or I saw this done somewhere else, which is exactly what like most TV shows and like movies do.
Exactly, and that's one of the differences with this show. You can point to any scene, you can point to any shot, any line of dialogue. And you can't say that every single time it's the right choice. Nothing's perfect, but you can.
But it was deliberate.
It was deliberate. Somebody has a reason they made that choice. They thought about it. There's a reason they take 2 years, where they took a couple years to write the season. Like, they thought through every choice.
Yeah. And there was a pandemic.
Well, yeah. But they've said that a silver lining to that is it gave them a chance to beat up on their ideas a little bit more, and they used that time wisely. And I think...
And you can tell, and this is like objectively true because you even hear on the Insider podcast, well, you listen to it. I don't listen.
I filter
in part
through
because I don't want to like influence my own thinking. And I like to take the show without too much like external input.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of lazy.
Yeah.
But like the writers will like sometimes I'll say, well, okay, why did they do this instead of this? And you'll say, well, actually, the writers thought about that and explained their choice on the podcast.
Like a good example would be Lalo, and how we were kind of skipping a lot in his story this season. He's in Germany. Next scene, he's back in Albuquerque, which just felt strange because so often you see every step of a process. And I don't remember the full explanation, but they talked about it.
Yeah. I think part of it was just they had to prioritize what they're showing, and they only had limited time, right?
Right. And you have to decide who you're with, right? You want Lalo to be this looming specter in the background. So if you're spending too much time with him, it takes away some of the mystery.
Right. And how important is it to the story they're trying to tell for us as an audience to know specifically how is he able to get on a plane to Germany? Like,
right.
It's not that important that I know how he did it. Because I already believe he has the means.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
It's much more important that I see like Jimmy and Kim.
Exactly. Yeah. So going back to that original question of how do you feel about the finale a few days later, I'll second what you said. Loved it right after we saw it, and the more I've thought about it this week, the more I love it. I think it was a masterpiece, and I think I'm so glad. I think the episodes leading up to this, I would also call each of them a masterpiece. And I could see myself deciding, if I down the road said I want to rewatch the finale, I don't think I would watch the finale.
Yeah, you got to watch all three
exactly
in a row.
3, would it be 4? When was Nippy? Nippy was 609, I think, if I'm not forgetting.
If that's the case, then every time I've been saying like 3 episodes, just change it to 4, because I'm just basically referring to once the Gene timeline became the primary anchor.
You were right. It was 10.
Okay.
But that would make it 4.
10, 11, 12, 13.
Yeah. Yeah, you hear 13, so you just think
3.
Yeah. Also,
by the way, just a little side thing. The whole format of blank and blank for the episode titles changes as soon as the Gene story becomes prominent.
Yeah.
And this is just off the cuff, but one thought I have about that is blank and blank is when Jimmy and Kim are still together.
Oh, wow,
you know?
yeah.
There's a pair of things.
Yeah.
And then there no longer is.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I also love when you mentioned James McGill. We can add on one more identity now, because he was Jimmy, then he was Saul, then Gene, now he's James.
Yeah.
I love that. So I love the finale, and I thought
James is like the mature. I mean, it actually makes sense. Like, James is a Jimmy who's been through a ton of stuff and has come out the other end kind of the same, but a little bit more mature and kind of wizened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that how you say that? Wizened?
I think so, but I was hoping we would just like roll with it.
Say wizened.
Wizened.
And then I'll Google after.
Yeah, and then cut it
right.
in.
I'll just cut it in. Yeah, so I love the finale, and coming up to the finale, knowing that these writers don't like to leave any ambiguity, I thought, what does that mean when you're not killing a character? Because if you're going to leave these characters and we know that they continue to exist, that normally I don't think about that in a story, because I'm very used to a story ending and the character's still alive.
Yeah.
But I just know that I didn't walk away from Breaking Bad with a sense of, oh, it was an ambiguous ending. Even for Jesse.
Yeah.
It felt like I got what I needed.
Right. And because I could just say to myself, I like to think that he successfully escaped. And there's good reason to believe it. And I think even Vince Gilligan, I think, said something to that effect. I could be misremembering.
He did,
but I think he said, I like to believe he got away.
Right.
Which basically makes it that he did get away, because whatever he likes to do is what's going to end up in the show most of the time.
Yeah. But here, for some reason...
And then El Camino, solidified it.
Yeah, exactly. For this series, I had a really hard time picturing what does an unambiguous ending look like
without death, right?
Without death, especially for characters this complicated. Not to diminish Jesse's character, but I never had this much discourse about what was going on in his head. And part of it is because we didn't have a podcast about it at the time. But at least my memory is that Saul and Kim are definitely more complex than Jesse.
Well, and complex isn't necessarily the right word. I think they could be more complex, but it could also just be Jesse was like more expressive of his emotions, and it was always pretty clear what his intentions were and what his ambitions and values were.
Yeah. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Because I don't want to say less complicated and say, oh, he felt less real.
Right.
He felt very real to me, but I guess less mysterious.
Yeah.
And it felt like there was less that had to be resolved in his soul by that point. It was really a logistical question by the time we got to the finale of, is he going to die in captivity? What is the current state of his life? And is he going to get away? So him getting away was kind of the only answer I needed.
Yeah.
I guess for Kim and Jimmy, it just felt like there was so much
You need internal resolved stuff and like resolution as to their morals and the mystery in many ways had less to do with where will Jimmy physically end up and more to do with what will he choose.
Yeah. And so I guess
with Jesse, we always knew like pretty early on, it was clear his choice would be like make some money, try not to harm people, and get out.
Right, and then
similar to Nacho.
Yeah, and partway through the series, I think he sees he doesn't want anything to do with this world.
Yeah,
he wants to get out, and it's a question of how.
Yeah,
and will he succeed? And so I guess what I'm saying after all that is I'm so impressed that they were able to give us an ending that didn't feel ambiguous. It was as happy as I could have asked for, while not feeling cheap or unearned. It was the more I think about it, the more it feels like the perfect ending. And I love that we can imagine Jimmy and Kim still out there, imagine what they're up to, and they're still there, but I still feel like I got an ending, a satisfying ending.
Yeah.
So I love it. Let's get into it, yeah? Let's get into the actual episode. So we start with a flashback to one of the greatest episodes of the series. Bagman, that's right. Mike and Jimmy sit down to rest after they find some water. Of course, you get the great shot of Jimmy shoving his head into the water.
Yeah. It's funny to watch him drink from inside the water because it just looks like he's like a fish opening and closing his mouth.
It felt like our final callback.
Yeah, I was thinking that
the
too.
Goldfish.
The same way we see the buzzing exit sign for Chuck, this is like a goodbye to the goldfish.
Yeah, I love that. And
that is an ambiguous ending, though. What happened to them?
To the goldfish?
To not them, but to that goldfish.
Well, that's where we get the spinoff.
Yeah.
The Finding Nemo style spinoff. Yeah. They're sitting down. Jimmy suggests they steal the $7 million. Doesn't seem like a totally serious suggestion. But Mike points out there are some people who might have a problem with that. Jimmy says, don't worry about them.
Yeah.
First thing
as if he has like some plan about it.
Mike's like, are you feeling okay?
Yeah.
And Jimmy says, first thing we do with the money is take $6 million and build a time machine. They'll never find us. And then Jimmy says, where would you go if you had a time machine? And Mike gives a sincere answer. First, he says December 8th, 2001.
The day Maddie was killed, right?
Right, which we don't know that date, but just based on the timeline of when Mike returned to Albuquerque after getting revenge, that was 2002. It seems like this would have to be that date.
Yeah.
And then he says, no, wait. March 17th, 1984, the day he took his first bribe.
Right, the day he entered the game.
Right.
In a way.
Yeah, no, I think that's essentially what you're saying. That was the day he took a detour down Bad Choice Road. And then he said he'd go forward. There are some people he'd like to check in on 5 or 10 years down the road. Make sure they're doing okay. Which, first off, the score here, if you go, and the score throughout the episode is great, but if you listen to it here, it's very sad. It essentially is the sound of regret. And I also found Mike talking about going forward to check on people. One publication I saw was talking to Peter Gould, and they said, oh, that was hinting at a spinoff, right? 5 or 10. For me, it sounded almost like awareness of his mortality.
Yeah.
He's not going to be here in 5 to 10 years. Like I think he knows that the game he's playing is a dangerous one. He just wants to make the money his family needs, and then probably he's going to die.
Interesting. I didn't see it as a recognition of his mortality, but that does make sense to me. I just saw it as I just want to go travel to the future and just see how they're doing.
Yeah.
But I think it's your interpretation. I think is valid.
Yeah, and it's I didn't view it what I just said about it being him aware of his mortality. It's definitely not the way I took it the first time I heard it. But I guess on my second viewing, just knowing he doesn't make it, it just adds a sense of
it would make it even more logical that that's what he wants to do.
Exactly. And then Mike asks Jimmy what he would do. Easy. May 10th, 1965. Invest with Warren Buffett at Berkshire. He'll be a trillionaire in the future.
Berkshire.
Yeah. And Mike says, that's it? Money? Nothing you'd change. Jimmy considers. And then he gets up and says, I'm arrested. So clearly we see him.
He doesn't want to really answer the question.
Right.
Like he's bringing up the notion of time machine because he's dancing around regret. He's not willing to really come out and say it. And that's a Walter White just like totally like blasts through when we see that flashback.
Yeah.
And so just the fact that he's referring to it through this lens of a time machine is already telling us he's struggling to express or even just internally face his real regrets here. So it's not surprising that he gives a kind of a baloney answer.
Yeah.
And he says it's all about money, but I don't even think he believes that. I think it's a cop-out answer so that he doesn't have to face like the real thing.
That's 100% what it is. And I think one thing this episode reminds me is that it's easy to say, well, he became Saul Goodman and shut down his emotions. You can't really do that. There's intentionality there throughout his time as Saul Goodman, I think. And I think sometimes he can slip into autopilot, but there are times like this where Mike's question, throwing it right back in Jimmy's face, tell me your regret, essentially. And when Jimmy has that considered look on his face, probably thinking of Chuck. He's thinking of the bad things he did.
Yeah.
And he has to be very intentional to say, I'm rested, let's get up, let's get moving. He has to shove those emotions back down.
Right.
He has to distract himself.
Right, and we even know, like, it's not just that he's not thinking about it. He's deliberately fighting the thoughts about it. So much so that when he's freezing at night in the desert during the actual episode Bagman, he refuses to wear like the Mylar blanket, like foil blanket thing, the space blanket, because that's what Chuck would use to shield himself from all the electrical rays when he was outside.
Right. Yeah, and we saw it when Jimmy found out that he was responsible for Chuck's suicide. He was the one who got the rates to go up. As soon as Jimmy hears that from Howard, he gets up to feed the goldfish. He starts whistling. Right, or even when he's in the RV with Jesse and Walt, when Jesse asks about Lalo, Jimmy says, "Start the RV, let's get back to the office." Like he cannot sit with that thought.
It's avoidance. That's
Exactly.
like the psychological term.
Yeah, so I think this episode just reminds us that this regret that he's talking about this episode, and when he finally decides to make the confession, it's not a switch flipping. Those thoughts were already there. It's him finally letting them out.
Not just letting them out, but facing them himself.
Yes.
Well, no, so I think when he really faced them himself was when he was on the airplane and when Bill Oakley was in the bathroom. Yeah. I think that's when he finally faced them himself because of what he learned about Kim.
Right.
And then when he finally expressed them was in the courtroom.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah, so, I love this scene.
Yeah. And this scene is a send-off to Mike.
That's what I wanted to ask next, is what did you think of this as Mike's final kind of send-off?
I thought it was great. Like, the last we saw of Mike previously was the machine in the parking lot that replaced him.
Yeah, that's right.
It actually kind of was. It was to say, like, Mike's gone and, like, the world is moving forward without him and he was easily replaced.
Right.
And kind of even during his life or like later in life, his role was just that of a fixer. Like he just executed.
A button man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the last we saw of the fleshy before his consciousness got downloaded into a robot, it was him talking to Nacho's father.
Right.
Yeah, you're a gangster, just like the rest of them, you idiot.
Right, and that could also work as a send off for him because it's a sad send off. There's nothing positive there. It's basically punitive and saying, you're just as bad, for being involved in this and for perpetuating the cycle. And I think Nacho's father's basically right, but he's also underestimating the amount of good in Mike's heart. And so I think this was an appropriate end because it's saying yes, those things Nacho's father said, those are true, but that doesn't mean Mike doesn't regret it, and it doesn't mean he would definitely do things differently if he could.
Yeah.
which I don't think is the case. Like, whereas someone like the twins or Hector, or Gus, like, I think their regrets really are just that they either got caught or died.
Yeah. So it felt like a little bit of a correction for Mike, in the sense that they were basically saying that Mike is a bad guy, right? He's a gangster, and that's all he is, and he's no different from anyone else. And to some extent, that almost felt like the show moralizing at us to say, although you were invested in the Mike character, don't forget he did bad things. He has chosen the wrong path, and we know that he will never get off that path because we saw Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
So for me, it felt appropriate to end on that shot of him, or that scene that included the shot where it looks like he's in a prison behind the fence talking to Nacho.
But it's also a little bit one-sided and a little unfair to him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I don't think they needed to do it, but I do like that wasn't the final statement on Mike, that we did get to come back here. And I don't think it told us really anything new about his character.
No.
Of course he regrets those things.
It was just making it a better final word on him.
Yeah, and they kind of get away with it because it's not cheating, because it also feeds into the Jimmy character and perfectly sets up the theme for this episode.
It's constructive. It's not just like a snippet that you can take or leave it. I mean, the show would have been fine without it, which is true of a lot of scenes, but it enhances Jimmy's progression in this
Exactly.
episode.
And I would say the same thing about the Walt flashback, where it enhances Jimmy's progression, but they also use it as an opportunity to show some great Walt-isms, things we didn't need to see, but it's fun to see them again.
Now, all right, is it a little convenient that they can just kind of look back and say, oh yeah, this is a conversation that happened, which we didn't show you before? Like, do you think if they knew exactly how the series was going to go from the beginning, they would have shown us that conversation during the actual episode, Bagman? Similar, and imagine even if that conversation with Walter White happened in Breaking Bad, like, think the kind of long-term planning. Now that's like kind of impossible. It's just way too much long-term planning, especially for the way these people work, the writers. But do you think that would have been better?
No, I don't think so, because like this conversation with Mike, if we'd seen this a season ago, it would have had so much less impact in that context versus this context. So I would rather they not show it to us and then show it to us here, where the whole theme of the episode is regret. And it's so much more powerful here. Same with the
and it's
scene.
also relevant. It shows you these flashbacks are there because these are the things on Jimmy's mind.
Yes.
Right.
And it's similar to only showing us Jimmy's side of the phone call with Kim, or not even showing it to us. Just we didn't get to hear it, but we saw his reaction to speaking with Kim. And then later they show us the full context of the call.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they're saying, I mean, A, it's interesting. It keeps you invested to say, what was on the call? I can't wait to find out. But B, that call had so much more. When we're dealing with Kim and we see that she decides to go make the confession, that's when you need to hear the full context and when it makes the most sense for you to hear all of it.
Yeah.
So there's precedent for them purposely not showing us something and only showing it to us when it'll have the greatest impact.
Right.
So
good answer.
Thank you. Thank you. You're like that was the correct answer.
Yeah.
So this whole final send off for Mike, basically perfection. Perfect start to the episode.
Yeah. What a great character.
Great character. Yeah. Then we get to the starting. So as we've been seeing these last few episodes, the tape is over. And someone else pointed it out. But yeah, no more theme song, right? So we actually heard the Better Call Saul theme song for the last time and didn't know it was the last time.
Yeah.
But we see a couple of images. We see the Albuquerque Isotopes air freshener.
Yep.
And we see the dough making machine in the prison.
See, so I kept trying to. All right, the AMC Plus app is absolute trash.
Yeah.
It's unusably bad.
The one silver lining to the series ending, don't need to use that app anymore.
Thank God. It's so horrible. All I was trying to do, like when I watched the episode 3 times. And the second time I was watching, like, I don't know, I was in a car or something, and I was watching on my phone, and I kept just trying to pause on that like segment to see what were they showing us, and I couldn't do it. All I saw was something that looked kind of like a grid almost, or like cage like. So this is the first time hearing that it was the dough machine.
Yeah. It was very fast.
Yeah.
Like the second time I watched the episode and really tried to catch what it is, I thought maybe it was Chuck's lantern. But then I slowed it way down.
To me, it looked like the face mask of a football helmet.
Yeah. I mean, it's very hard to tell what it is. If you go frame by frame though, and then go to the prison scene, like it is the dough maker in the prison. Yeah, so that was interesting. And by the way, I think you should just say to the camera, make sure people hear, when you were watching this in the car, you were not driving the car, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we could say that, sure.
Yeah.
Then we get back to the present. Gene's on the run.
Just to be clear, I wasn't.
Yeah, he was not driving. Gene's on the run. He goes back home, gets his little box, and they're sending in the cavalry.
Yeah.
Cavalry?
This is cavalry, yeah.
And it's a helicopter overhead.
Yeah, just as you were predicting and hoping.
Yeah, I wanted to see the helicopter.
Actually, I would have liked it to be even more like, I really wanted it to feel like he had like, what's the most stars you can have in Grand Theft Auto?
Grand Theft Auto?
Yeah, like
is it 5?
6?
Or is it
5 or 6? I can't remember.
But he had
I
the
think
max.
it's 6. He had 5 stars. 6 would have been if the military was after him too.
Right, when you start seeing tanks around every
corner. So he
corner.
had 5 stars, and it was cool to see him just scrambling and like running through back streets and like going through fences, and the helicopter was awesome.
Yeah, and there's the great shot of him walking.
I actually think
the
the helicopter did kind of spot him.
Yeah.
I don't think he made it to the tunnel in time.
Yeah, I think there was no getting away.
Yeah.
No part of me thought he was going to escape this. There's a great shot of him walking through the tunnel.
That was awesome.
Don't really have much more to say besides
looked cool.
Just looked really cool.
Yeah.
And I will say this, I almost thought about not mentioning it because do we want to sully this with any nitpicks whatsoever in terms of spoilers and everything? But when the episode started, and they're showing which actors are in the episode, I was eating something at the time, and I was like, let me just raise the plate slightly to cover it up. And I was like, no, you're being paranoid, just whatever. And then like 5 seconds later, Peter Dyseth.
Right, the actor for Bill Oakley.
Yeah, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, we're going to court.
I saw that, and I verbally was like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
And then I think you tried to cover it up by being like, no, they always show all the actors there.
Yeah, his name doesn't.
I kind of knew that you were lying, but I tried to.
Yeah.
I tried to believe it.
I was lying to myself too, because you would see Michael Mando's name.
I want some suspense.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, so I was saying for the last few episodes, once we got to the Gene timeline, I think they stopped showing all the actors' names.
Yeah.
But episodes 4 through 9, Michael Mando, who plays Nacho, his name would show up in the opening credits.
Right, even
and
after
obviously,
his demise.
Obviously he's not in the episode. So I tried to say, well, just because Bill Oakley popped up in the opening credits doesn't mean he's in the episode.
Yeah.
But, yeah, clearly he was. So as soon as I saw that, I knew there was no getting away for Gene.
Right.
But thankfully, that all happens pretty quickly anyway.
Yeah, and as we've established, the suspense here was less about what physically is going to happen to him and more about what's going on in his head and what's he going to decide.
Exactly. The important parts, I'll say that in general, the important things on the show that really matter rarely have gotten spoiled.
Yeah.
It's usually more things that, it'd be nice not to have known that, but it's not the end of the world.
And a lot of those things that were spoiled, many of them were pretty predictable too. So like a lot of things, just overall this season, a lot of things progressed as expected. Like Gus shot Lalo in the super lab just as everything was just as it was set up. Like, and there was no surprise, like there was no twist to it that was unexpected. It just happened the way many people thought it would go down.
Right.
Similarly, we did the poll on YouTube, and we got a lot of responses, right? It was like over 1,000 responses. Yeah, thousands of replies, and it was like at least half the audience said Jimmy's going to end up in jail.
Yeah.
Which was true, but there were so many little caveats and nuances to it that there was definitely still surprise to it, and even if we knew for a fact he ends up in jail, there's still a lot going on that was satisfying and surprising.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest accomplishments of this series as a prequel is that we always knew he was going to become Saul Goodman. But the question is, what did that mean for the character of Jimmy McGill? And that became a very suspenseful question.
Yeah.
And the answer was so surprising and so satisfying. And that's just the biggest example of something that's true across the board in this series. It's less about what happens, more about why and what it means for the characters. So Gene hides in the dumpster.
Perfect.
Now, one part that just makes you cringe so hard is he opens up his little Band-Aid box to pull out the disappearer's business card. All the diamonds are in there, and he very precariously rests it on the edge of the shoebox. So then when he's struggling to open the annoying...
Those freaking plastic things. Blister packaging.
One of the worst things ever created by mankind. He tries to...
That person, they deserve a fate worse than Gus.
Yeah. They should be buried. Hopefully, they're buried in a super lab somewhere.
Yeah.
The guys listen, hey, I'm a big fan of your show. How could you say that?
Or they should be put in one of those plastic things and allowed to just, suffocate.
So Gene's trying to open it, and his hand flings and knocks the diamonds off. And then you just hear a knock.
Clink, 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 clink. Well, that's all the diamonds spilling onto the bottom of the dumpster. God, so frustrating.
And then a noise much even worse than diamonds rattling at the bottom of a dumpster. Someone's knocking on the top of the lid. Anybody home?
Yeah.
And they get him.
The shot of him peering through with his hands, like, so good. He's like a little turtle.
That's an iconic shot, I think. And it just so appropriate that Jimmy McGill was captured. Saul Goodman was captured in a dumpster.
And he was fleeing like through like gutter, or I don't know what you would call that thing, but like going under this like thing that would catch water.
Is it a culvert?
If so, it was like a massive one. But like just him going in the underground. And like, again, he's La Cucaracha.
That's right. Yeah. And you just imagine in this reality, years from now, people will be telling the legend of Saul Goodman. Do you know where they got him? They got him.
It's like Saddam Hussein getting caught, and they called it like the spider hole or something. Like he was in a hole in the ground when they caught him, and I'm sure the similarity was not lost on the writers. Even just like the shot of him coming out, it's very like there's an iconic picture of Saddam Hussein being dragged out of the hole in the ground.
Yeah, I'm sure that wasn't staged. Yeah, you trust everything the government tells you, Adam.
Yeah, totally.
So good, just such a great choice. And then we see Gene at the station. And he's kind of bashfully watching some cops listening to old Saul Goodman commercials.
It's very believable that they would do that and like all gather around and be like looking into this guy that they found.
That just felt very real.
Yeah.
And then he makes his phone call. He calls the Cinnabon, make sure they opened okay, and let them know he's not going to be coming back.
Yeah.
Why did he waste his call on this?
Well, he knows the law. He knows how all this stuff works. So he probably didn't see it as a waste of a call. That's for starters. Psychologically, it might be a bit of a way to settle himself and just be like, okay, let me just take care of one like logistical thing.
Yeah.
And so that I'm not inconveniencing other people. And it's something. It's the same way like if things are really bad or you're in a bad situation, if you're like, let me just focus on like the moment for a second, or let me think about something simple.
The one thing I know I need to do, I know how to do it. Let me just go check that box.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like if you have like a really messed up to-do list and you're super stressed, and it's like, well, let me do this one easy thing first.
Right.
Yeah. And let me organize my desk.
Exactly. And to your point, it seems like it wasn't that hard for him to get another call, so he wasn't worried about quote-unquote wasting this call. And it warmed my heart to see that he cared to make that, because he didn't have to. He could have just let them scramble and figure things out.
Well, like that's one admirable quality of his character is when he's when he has a responsibility that he's actively chosen for himself, he follows through. Yeah. It's a lot like you. Yeah. Like he just commits to it and he executes it, and he usually does it well. And this is like him settling this one of his few remaining affairs like to handle and to make sure things are in working order and that he's not going to mess up other people's time. Right. Yeah.
And also I like a little lesson to us. I always thought you only get one phone call. Yeah. But now I know all you have to do is start going
bang on the door.
Another phone call. Yeah. Hey, another one.
Yeah.
Also, I just started to smile thinking about, it's so interesting how much discourse we can have about this one character where we tear apart every single decision he makes. Imagine if someone did that for you in your life. Like, oh, he got up at 11 a.m. today.
I'd be afraid to do anything. I'd be probably just be unable to act because I'd be like, well, what are they going to say?
Why do you think he wasted his whole day doing nothing but eating Cheetos? Then we see Gene in that tiny holding cell. And this was one of my favorite shots of the episode. Just seeing him in that little cramped space, it felt so like a bottom moment. Yeah. This is one of the worst moments of his life.
This is how they get you.
Yeah, he keeps repeating that over. This is how they get you? This is how they get you?
I don't think he was always saying it with the tone of a question. Yeah. But but there were some ways. Sometimes he said it sort of questioningly, and other times he said it more as a statement, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. And
not a huge distinction, but
no, but it's just that felt like a very real spiral.
Yeah, and I Googled that phrase, and I even I put it in quotes to see if I can find the exact thing.
That sentence has never been uttered. In history.
No results. No. So there were results, but nothing that told me it was a reference of any kind. Like it's not some phrase, some like iconic phrase or something else. But it sounded like it might be, but it wasn't.
Yeah, and so it now is an iconic phrase.
Yeah.
And then he says, "What were you thinking?"
Yeah.
And punches the door. Can't relate to that at all. But then he notices graffiti on the wall.
If you want to know more about that,
yeah,
subscribe to the Patreon where we share more personal details.
That's right.
Gil can tell you about his anger management problems.
Yeah, if you want to get into our little cell, and hear what, just sign up for the Patreon, and that's where we talk about stuff we can't really talk about on YouTube.
You'll understand why Gil perpetually has some pain in his hand.
Yeah. This is how they get me.
Yeah.
He notices some graffiti on the wall.
My lawyer will ream your A.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now,
your donkey.
Help me understand, is that a message to the authorities? Like, my lawyer is going to really do a number on you? Okay. I didn't know.
What did you think?
So initially,
like to another prisoner, like to subsequent prisoners in there?
It was like a warning, like, don't work with my lawyer. He sucks.
Oh, no. It's
not that.
This was a message to his captors.
Which makes sense because that reminds Jimmy McGill, you know what? I'm Saul Goodman. What am I doing in here?
I'm a lawyer, and I can ream many at A's.
That's right.
In this process.
So he starts laughing, almost unhinged. But, it was just an emotionally unstable moment, and you can't help but think of...
Crawl Space.
That's right, yeah. Not exactly the same, but it's hard not to make the comparison.
Well, it's a rock bottom moment. In Walter White's case, the cackling was he was out of options.
Yeah.
In Saul's case, the cackling was he has an option.
Yeah.
Kind of, right? It was that, and he just is in disbelief as to the situation, like the turns his life has taken.
Yeah, it's like an emotional release in two different ways. For Walt, it's I give up.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, that's what I recall. And for Saul, it's I've reached a decision now. So emotional release.
Right. And I thought that was really, like, I've never seen his face look like that. First of all, in general, on camera or whatever, seeing someone perfectly in profile is usually a little jarring because we don't see it too often. Like whenever people are shot in this show and in general, it's usually, you're not square on them, which is also kind of unsettling, which is what was cool about Gus's final appearance on the show. But similarly, this one, like perfectly in profile of Jimmy, he's got this huge kind of unsettling grin, like Joker style almost. Cool, very cool shot.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really well acted, and we've never heard noises like that come from him before. That said, speaking with others, I've heard some say that the scene felt a little overacted.
Whoa, interesting.
What do you think?
I guess I can't relate to that at all. I mean, to me, it felt like he is just losing control. And in reality, we don't often see that. So I think it should be jarring.
We don't know what it looks like, so it's hard to say that it felt overdone because maybe that's actually how it would play out. Yeah, it looked odd because it didn't look the way it normally does when someone is just laughing uncontrollably. And I think that's because this was not just that's funny. It was a little bit of that, but leading into reaffirming myself as Saul Goodman. And I love the kind of messy trend. For one last time.
Exactly.
One last ride in this identity.
Yeah, and it's the first time in years he gets to just, well, I guess 2 years, he gets to just be Saul Goodman again.
Yeah.
And I love the transition from the laughter.
Which is funny. Saul Goodman is what got him into this mess.
Yeah.
Saul Goodman is what's going to help him get out.
This is,
at least in the moment, that's what he's thinking.
I'm not locked in here with you.
Yeah.
You're locked in here with me.
Right.
I mean, this is Saul Goodman in the legal system. This is where he should be his most powerful.
Yeah, it's like a fish in water.
That's right.
Instead of out of water.
Yeah. And I love the messy transition from laughing to, I need another phone call, another one, like, as we alluded to.
And he's like excited and like he's in a rush to do it just because he's like, when Saul Goodman gets an idea, he just pursues it like fast and hard.
Yeah. That's right. And then we cut to,
whereas when I get an idea, I write it down. And then I just think, man, I should really do that, and then I don't do it.
There's a reason we didn't start Saulcast until season 4.
I was gonna say the most recent idea I had that I actually executed was Saulcast.
Yeah.
So it's been a few years.
Cut to, who's he calling? Bill Oakley.
Yes.
Which
we were like, yeah.
Yeah, we loved seeing Bill, and we have a special relationship with Bill.
He's a friend of the podcast now.
That's right. To speak for him.
Yeah.
You know.
To put words into his mouth.
Yeah. But he most recently made an appearance in our very own Better Call Saul spinoff.
The first ever Saulcast one-take short film.
That's right.
First of many.
Yeah, and I'll put a link in the description. But basically, it didn't sit right with us that there's no spinoff announced. So we said, screw it. Shot our own. I think it's pretty funny.
You said, I'll handle this myself.
That's right. So I'll put a link in the description. And yes, Peter Dyseth as Bill Oakley makes an appearance.
That's right.
So you're going to want to check it out. So Saul's talking to Bill, and Saul sounds extremely confident. For someone who has been caught dead to rights, he just doesn't seem to have a care in the world.
Right, because he's basically letting Saul Goodman take the wheel right now. And Saul Goodman, he's the ultimate confidence man.
Yeah, that's right. It's all good, man. It's all going to be good.
Exactly.
And he tells Bill that he's going to be his advisory
Before
counsel.
Saul Gone.
Yes.
Right? Saul Good, then Saul Gone.
That's right. He tells Bill this is going to be an opportunity that's going to make his career. If he defends the Saul Goodman and he ends up getting a good deal out of this, it's going to look great for Bill Oakley as a defense attorney.
Yeah, and if like Jimmy went with the deal, Bill Oakley would look like a miracle worker.
Yeah.
Even though really it was all Jimmy's doing, but like, yeah, he would look amazing.
Oh, yeah. And so Bill points out, they have so much evidence against you. You know, I got to ask, where do you see this ending?
What's eating you?
With me on top.
Yeah.
Like always. So very confident.
Yeah.
And then...
Which is, again, just another insight into, like, Saul Goodman sees the world as wolves and sheep, winners and losers, and he plans to win.
Yeah, he's going to be the wolf.
Whatever winning means in this impossible scenario.
Yeah. And we very quickly find out what it means because we flash forward. Bill's flown down to Omaha, and we see Saul in chains.
Wait, is this happening in Omaha? I can't remember. Or is the trial happening in Albuquerque?
No, he goes to Albuquerque. That's when he's on the plane later.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the initial like dealing, like when they're dealing and coming up. This is like pre-court and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. And just like cinematographically.
Sure.
Visually, really cool scene here. It's almost. I was speaking with Daniel yesterday because he was bringing it up and saying, like, it almost already feels like he's on trial. The way he's surrounded in this room with like all these people in like the square, like right angles around him, symmetric and everything, and it's this otherwise dark room. And I was like, it's almost like he's in a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like he's like on display in front of everyone. It's similar to like that dream of like you're naked at school or something.
And now, sorry, keep going.
So, but yeah, my point is just like this is almost like it's like a page out of like an existentialist, like not. It's like a page out of Camus, like The Stranger or something. Like he's on trial in front of everyone.
Yeah,
he's like in the center.
And the
it's
scene,
like a cosmic judgment of him.
The shot you're talking about, by the way, so we're not there yet because you're talking about when they get to the end of the negotiation.
Yeah.
And there's like a darkness behind them. They're all staring at him. So we'll get to that.
Yeah, I just couldn't wait.
Yeah, I know that. I was going to call that out. You asked me before this, like, how much are you going to talk about some of the visuals? And that was definitely one of the ones I wanted to call out.
Yeah.
So we'll revisit that in a few minutes. But here, first off, Saul, what's something very different about his face in this scene, Adam?
No mustache.
Yeah, he's
the
shaved.
last we've seen of his mustache.
Yeah, we finally see the true Saul Goodman.
Right.
Well,
And-
almost. Well, once he gets his suit back, I'd
Yeah.
say that's the true Saul Goodman.
But he's a different Saul Goodman. Less hair, a little older.
Yeah, no comb over. So him and Bill walk into a room where they're going to meet with the prosecutor to negotiate the plea deal. But on their way in the hallway, you see Marie, and she throws a glance at Saul.
That was a huge surprise to me. I don't know if that's something that leaked, that she's cast in it or not. It probably was.
Yeah,
but,
I didn't know about it.
but I had no idea, and I really thought that was cool because she's a character that, you know, she had a big presence on Breaking Bad, but never. I really didn't think about her too much after the series, aside from like, they're not rocks, Marie, they're minerals.
Well, and remember when she used to steal stuff?
Yeah, and she was kleptomania, and like, so she was an interesting character, but not fully fleshed out. And to see her again, first of all, was like realistic, I think, and took the events of Breaking Bad more seriously, and showed us like there were very personal outcomes for people.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, just with her stealing stuff, that ended up being kind of a punchline. Like, I don't think anyone was really a fan of that subplot, if I remember correctly.
I think, yeah, I mean, I heard some people say it was pointless.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just didn't hear many people speak on it.
But
I kind of liked it just because it added some, it just made her more, it gave her character more complexity.
Yeah. But
I would say similarly, I just never thought about it too much.
So just thinking about it now, it almost feels like a Kim Wexler prototype.
Yeah.
Where Kim, you know, she stole the earrings, and now she's doing these schemes,
Yeah.
and you're wondering why. It's almost like she could have, if they had executed that storyline in the right way, it really could have elevated her character.
Right, because we are talking about a compulsion, like an addiction. Now, in her case, she was doing it to cope with certain types of life stressors. But I do think it fits the character that we see now in Better Call Saul, because with the kleptomania, we see that she was coping with difficulties in life by like doing something wrong, or like, and then subsequently kind of lying about it and stretching the truth. And as much as she is a victim here, she's stretching the truth too. Like, Saul was multiple layers removed from Hank's death.
Right.
And he didn't pull the trigger. And the person who pulled the trigger was at that point was an adversary of Saul and Walter. So like, Saul has some guilt in this situation. He bears some of the responsibility, but it's such a small percentage compared to the other people involved. It's just that he's the last one left.
Right. Well, and painting Hank as a saint.
Yeah,
Now,
he wasn't a saint. He was a good guy overall,
Yeah.
and everything, but like, he broke the law in pursuit of like what he deemed as justice, which is exactly what a lot of other people do on this show.
Yeah.
And get judged for that.
Right.
He beat the crap out of Jesse extra legally.
Yeah.
You know, he had some flaws.
Yeah. I love that way of putting it. It almost makes it extra legally.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like the most polite way to put it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think that's what the government calls it when they break the law.
Bringing Betsy Brandt back was genius. And I'm so glad they apparently had thought about bringing her back in season 1 for a cameo, because she was a radiologic technologist. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
So she was going to be helping Chuck with his MRI. And I think the reason they decided not to put her in is exactly what we were talking about earlier, which is anytime they bring one of these characters back, they don't want them to just be there. They want to give them something to do. Like, give us a Marie-ism, the same way we got some Walt-isms this episode. And they couldn't find a way to make it work. So they decided not to use her. And I'm so glad they didn't, because that made this moment so much more impactful. Because you can't help but sit up in your chair when you see her. And then you remember that she lost Hank, and you see the scorn in her eyes when she looks at Saul.
Pure hatred.
And it puts a face to the crimes. Right. Because they read his rap sheet. They tell you everything he did wrong, but this makes it so much more personal, and we need to think of all that so we understand why this guy is deserving of punishment.
Yeah.
because we gloss over the events of Breaking Bad in the context of Better Call Saul. I was
Right,
thinking,
and like I remember speaking with Daniel, and he was asking like, what? This was like before this scene, like before this episode, like what are his actual crimes?
Yeah.
Like, did he even actually break the law at any point? I was like, oh yeah, he definitely did.
Well, and we of course remember Chuck and we remember Howard, but those were accidents. As Saul, he was an active participant in facilitating Walt's empire and facilitating certain murders. And like, yes, Hank specifically, that there was no. I mean, he did suggest killing Hank at one point.
That's
send him
true.
to Belize,
Yeah.
So it's a lot more unforgivable than what he did as Jimmy. So I think it was very important to put a face on those crimes. And there are people out there who watch Better Call Saul, didn't watch Breaking Bad. And I would say throughout the series, mostly I could see that working. These last couple of episodes, like when you get to this point, I think you're missing something if you didn't watch Breaking Bad.
Agreed.
I don't think
Because
it'll
you're
land
not
as
seeing
much.
the full extent of Saul's impact on events.
Yeah, and I think you're going to have a great experience like now getting to go watch Breaking Bad, but I think I'll go on record and say the proper viewing order is Breaking Bad, then Better Call Saul. El Camino between seasons 4 and 5, or 5 and 6, whenever it aired, I forget.
Yeah.
Now we meet the federal prosecutor, George Castellano, and George lists out all of Saul's crimes. He lists out the punishment for each. It all adds up to life plus 190 years. And he says, so I'm going to make you one take it or leave it offer, 30 years. And Saul doesn't seem to be listening. He's just staring at the one-way glass. He knows Maria's back there, and he tells him to bring her in. And she looks at Saul, says her piece. Hank Schrader, great guy, helped people. Blanca Gomez is now raising...
with a smile and a joke.
That's
is
right.
That what he said? What she said?
Yeah, she'll be there. Anytime somebody needed help, he would be there with a smile and a joke.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is no laughing matter, Hank. Stop smiling.
Yeah.
And now Blanca Gomez is raising 3 children without a father, and Saul helped the two-faced bastard who did it. There's Walt.
Yeah.
That's what she's talking about there. And why did Saul do all this? For the money. And Saul plays the victim by using a little bit of truth. 2 years ago, a man came into my office. He said his name was Mayhew. He wanted one
Is
of
that Badger?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, it was Walt pretending to be Badger's uncle.
Oh, yeah.
So this Badger got arrested for selling to an undercover cop in a hilarious scene. I would recommend just rewatch that scene.
I remember it was the actor from The New Guy.
Yeah, we talked
was the
about
undercover cop,
all
yeah.
about this. I think I even put in the trailer for The New Guy in that episode. But season 2, episode 8, Better Call Saul. Watch the cold open of that episode. It's gonna make you laugh. He wanted one of my clients to lie under oath. Yada yada yada. Saul gets a sack thrown over his head. And when it's taken off, he was in front of a shallow grave. They put a gun to my head. And he basically claims that he worked for Walter White for a couple of years, but it was all under duress.
Which we know the truth, but it's so believable.
Such a great lie.
He sells it so well. And it, like, even Bill Oakley looks like he's believing it at the time.
I don't know if
I
I
don't
read
know.
it that way.
I don't think he actually is, but I think, or he's at least hearing it as if people will believe the story, or some people will.
The way
He's seeing the look on his face is one of following along with it and keeping up with it, rather than saying this is a crock of.
All right, so
Yes.
I'm going to do a rare hard disagree.
Okay.
Where
Maybe I need to rewatch it.
The look on Bill's face was purely, are they buying this?
Okay.
He has this cocked eyebrow and he's staring at the prosecutor and he's like, they're not buying this, are they?
I need to watch it again.
Yeah, take a look again. I don't think a single person in that room is buying it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And there's one more thing I'll say in terms of the lie Saul is selling them. He mentions the time that Walt had 10 people killed in prison,
Right.
all in the span of 2
And
minutes.
saying that could have been me if I told the truth and went to jail. Even then, I wouldn't be safe.
Exactly. And he says even after Walt died, Saul ran, but not from the cops. I mean, Jesse's still out there.
Yeah.
Right? Anybody else could come after me. And so Castellano says, you really think a jury will buy that?
I only need one.
Yeah, he kind of drops the facade. One. All I need is one.
Yeah.
And then he says, Oakley tells me you've never lost a case.
Yeah.
So, Adam, what's going on there?
He's basically saying you're taking a risk if you bring this to trial, but I also can't accept the deal you've already presented. So if you want to keep your perfect record, you got to give me a better deal.
Yeah, so when Saul hears that the guy's got a perfect record, what he's hearing is that this is
That's
a guy...
leverage over him.
That's leverage. This guy generally tends to settle. He will do whatever he can to settle because he wants to keep his record unsullied.
If that's really how this stuff works, that's so stupid.
So at least based off of one Redditor who claims to be a lawyer, and based off of his post, it seemed very believable. He gave an analysis of this final episode and basically how Saul's strategy here is a perfect legal strategy. And at least this guy claims this is real life, that there are prosecutors who are protecting their record and are more likely to settle.
So we really live in like a clown system.
Yeah, at least according to this one guy.
Well, a good thing is I have no intention of brushing up against the law.
That is definitely a life lesson I'm taking from this show.
Don't pursue a life of crime.
No.
Don't even make one bad choice road.
Yeah. You want to stay on the Bueno Camino.
Exactly.
Yeah, Camino Bueno. Marie says, you are not going to negotiate with this man. You are not.
Yeah, and it's like, you have no power here.
And you see Castellano just looking very nervous.
He's like, of course I am.
It basically smash cut to the aftermath of the negotiation. We got to point out that this is a low moment for Saul. Yeah. He is playing the victim in front of this widow, Marie.
It's a low moment, but that's where Saul does best. Like,
oh yeah,
in the trash and the gutter. Like, this is right out of the Saul Goodman playbook.
100%. And
it is say something that is transparently disingenuous, but still gets you what you want.
And he basically gets to wink at them and say, none of this is all BS.
Yeah.
But all I need to do is convince one. And he stops short of admitting it's not true, but he has an S-eating grin. Right. And
and just like the cab driver, just like Jeff, you got to believe he has his fans and supporters out there. Like he must have become kind of like a legendary cult figure.
Jeff, you said?
No. Just like Jeff admired Saul Goodman.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
you got to believe he has his fans. I mean, even like shooters get their fans.
Well, we'll definitely see later in the episode he has his fans.
Yeah,
Better Call Saul. Yeah, I'm afraid to bang on the table.
I did it very gently, yeah.
I feel kind of bad for when I was like, you're wrong, Adam. That's not what Bill Oakley was thinking. It's all open to interpretation. But, we'll take a look at it.
I'll readjust it because I think you're, I mean, look, I'm not saying he actually believed it.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is he found it to be a compelling narrative.
Yeah.
That's more what
I think that's probably true. And it's accurate.
I just can't talk good.
Yeah. That's not true. All right. We get to the aftermath of the negotiation. You can see they've been at it for a while. And this felt very true to life for me because back in my finance days, to reference that again, anytime we had a quarter close or we had a lot of work to do that was going to require a lot of teamwork, book a conference room. We'd be there till all hours of the night. And by the end of the night, it looks like that. You've got just discarded food containers.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. So that's what it looked like.
Piles of waste.
Yeah. Human excrement in one corner. Yeah. Because you can't leave, right?
That's right.
You got to focus. So everyone is exhausted except Saul, who just looks like king of the world.
Yeah.
They've negotiated down to 7.5 years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's life plus 190, right?
Yeah.
This is like less than 5% of the original sentence.
It sounds like it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
So he tells him he wants to go to FCI Butner Low, North Carolina, Wing D.
Good enough for Bernie Madoff.
It's the only penitentiary.
Which is a nice kind of like places him in that period of time.
Yeah, this is like when they did the Seinfeld reunion on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And it was like, what's that BlackBerry? Bernie Madoff. Just every reference you can get. The only penitentiary with a golf program. That I believe is true, by the way. And they agree to it. And he says, if I give you guys a chance, you'll throw me an ADX Montrose, the Alcatraz of the Rockies.
Which that's a bit confusing because ADX Montrose is fictional for this show, but there is a real federal prison called like a supermax jail called that's referred to as the Alcatraz.
Yeah, so there's so ADX Montrose is fictional. In reality, there's ADX Florence, which is called the Alcatraz of the Rockies.
So that's a bit confusing, but I think they just really wanted to use the note, like that concept, Alcatraz of the Rockies. So
I think
it only becomes confusing when you look into it.
I imagine they wanted to use ADX Florence. Maybe they couldn't.
It's copyrighted.
Yes, or maybe they just don't want, we don't want you to use our prison as like a stand-in for that's a hellhole. You don't want to go there. Like we're the worst prison of all.
That's like maybe too serious of a topic to like borrow some realism.
That's my guess. They didn't talk about it on the Insider podcast, so I'm not sure. But in any case, it's a bad prison. You don't want to go there. ADX, by the way, Administrative Maximum Facility. That's what that stands for. It's one of those. I
don't get that.
It's one of those acronyms where they kind of fudge it a little.
They do it because it sounds cool. Like you want an X in there because it feels like serious and extreme. It's like Patriot Act,
Yeah.
That one does actually use every first letter. This one just borrows some letters from different words.
Right, like that word has an X in it.
Sounds cool. Like ADX sounds like intense.
Yeah, it does. And there's no word that starts with an X in there. Well, there's an X in the word maximum, so you throw it in the acronym. And then finally, as Steve Jobs says, there's one more thing. He said, as Steve Jobs used to say, right? So this would have been after.
He would have died well, no. Is this happening in 2010?
Yeah.
I think he was still alive.
Oh, he died in 2011.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Well, he had stepped down already at that point from like whatever his position precisely was.
Right.
Yeah.
In any case, one more thing. He wants 1 pint Bluebell mint chocolate chip ice cream to be delivered every Friday.
Right. And that is the Saul Goodman flourish.
Yeah.
Right? That's like the way a serial killer needs to leave his signature thing.
Right.
That's his signature right there.
If he was a burglar, he would leave like an upside down ice cream, mint chocolate chip.
Or he would like smash the dog puppy's urns or something.
Right. Now they refuse, but he tries to entice them with one more tidbit, one more piece of information that he can negotiate with. Details on the death of Howard Hamlin.
Right.
Which he is now trying to parlay. He is trying to use the tragedy of Howard's death to get some ice cream.
It's interesting how and really it's him saying, I want to come out really on top. Like I already got this great deal, but I know I can take it further. And that is what Saul Goodman always does.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is causally, this ends up being the thing that kills Saul Goodman because he basically tempts them with this information about Howard and they know right away what he's talking about and say, you got nothing. Kim already told us all of this. Once he finds that, first of all, I found it a little weird that they would tell him that because you would think this is like an investigation. Maybe they would keep all the details quiet. And maybe they would also keep it quiet, like about who is giving them information. But I think in this case, it's relevant because it's a way to they're interrogating him basically, and it's a way to throw him off his guard is to say, your ex basically ratted you out already. Yeah. So I find it's like almost like a tactic to reveal that to him.
Also, I think they may not care as much at this point because the plea deal's done.
Things feel settled already.
Yeah.
So it's sort of irrelevant. But right, so if Saul Goodman didn't go for that one extra thing, Kim wouldn't have been brought into the conversation, and then all these, this whole thing, the way the wheels are turning wouldn't have gone the way that they did.
Yeah. And in terms of, we used the analogy a few times that he kind of needs to hit rock bottom before he decides to get help or improve himself. This feels like the Saul Goodman rock bottom because he is going as hard as he can and the hardest he's ever gone as Saul Goodman, where he's doing disgusting things like telling Marie that I'm the victim.
Yeah.
Or here, like I said before, trying to trade the tragedy of Hamlin's death for some ice cream.
Right, like the way it's so unceremonious and like it feels almost, it's like distasteful to do that. And also, for Saul Goodman, the only way he's willing to come clean about what happened is as a bargaining chip.
Yeah. And this is where we get to the scene you mentioned earlier, the great shot, when they start telling him, like, he's trying to sell us the Hamlin thing.
Right.
I guess you're not talking to your ex.
Right.
Kim.
That's a nightmarish
Yes.
realization.
And I think the black and white here works so well because it makes the darkness behind them so much darker. You see them all staring at Saul, and you threw out a lot of things that it reminded you of.
Yeah.
I'll add one more to that, which is if you think of the 60s, or probably even earlier than that, but like political paranoia thrillers, which some of those would have been in black and white, would have looked just like this. That's what it made me think
Like when
of.
they're in like the nuclear situation room or something.
Stuff like that, yeah.
Like a bunker. Yeah.
Right. So I love that. And I love how, again, using the Howard tragedy as a bargaining chip and the way he does it, where he's like a salesman. I got primo stuff I've never talked about before.
Later he says, I got something that'll make their toes curl.
Right. So another great scene.
Yeah.
And then flashback to the Saul and Walt scene in the disappearer's basement.
Love this scene.
I love it too because I called it.
Yeah.
Which we already acknowledged that, but can't acknowledge
He didn't
it too
just
much.
call that you'd have a Walter White cameo again. You called specifically that it would be in the bunker or like in the disappearer's basement.
I do need to admit,
Uh-oh.
it was known, apparently, and I don't know why I know this, but it was known that there was going to be one scene with Walt and Jesse, one with just Jesse, and one with just Walt.
Why is this known?
I don't know.
Why is this leaking?
And why people feel the need to tell me, I don't know.
like...
So-
okay, people will see us on the podcast, especially on the Instant Take, make speculations and try to guess what's going to happen next. And then people will just in the comments be like, we already know what happens next. They leaked
Right.
this. And it's like, I don't want the answer.
I know.
I want the fun of trying to guess.
Right. So when I made this prediction, I was prompted on the Pete Pepper stream, where earlier on in the season, people were very protective of me.
Yeah.
Like they wouldn't discuss the next time on. By the end, you can see no one
They're
cares.
treating
just
you like
whatever.
just a piece of meat. They
Yeah.
throw whatever spoilers they wanted at you.
So, yeah. So the question was basically, so we know Walt's going to appear in a scene. What do you think it's going to be? And I was like, him and Saul in the disappearer's basement.
I still think that's a great. We are anyway. We would have known that Walt's going to appear.
Yeah.
I guess we did. We couldn't have predicted for certain that they would appear in separate. Walt and Jesse would appear in separate scenes.
Yeah.
Which is, I think that's what led you to say, well, if it's Walter on his own, it's going to be the bunker scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Still a good prediction.
Thank you. And I mentioned earlier, we get to see a few good Waltisms. And one of them is his obsession with trying to fix something that really doesn't need to be fixed. Mm-hmm. I think it's the clicking noise with the boiler was my impression.
Like something it's supposed to ignite and
it keeps turning on and off.
Yeah.
And then Saul interrupts all that to ask, where would you go if you had a time machine?
Yeah.
Nonsense.
Yeah. You're talking about quantum physics right now?
Yeah. Which now I know Daniel took issue with this because Walt says it would violate the second law of thermodynamics. Mm-hmm. And according to Daniel, he studied physics, right?
Yeah.
So he basically said that, yes, a scientist like Walt would probably have a problem with the idea.
Especially a chemist.
Yeah, he would have a problem with the idea of time travel, but his go-to thing wouldn't be the second law of thermodynamics.
Oh, I actually think it might be because chemistry deals so much with, I think, with entropy and stuff. I think that's what the second law is about.
Well, let's talk to Daniel. Daniel, you owe Walt an apology.
He's speechless right now. That's because he's got nothing to my response.
So Saul says, got to be something you'd change.
Mm-hmm.
And Walt says, you're talking about regret. Yeah. So just ask about regret. Like, Saul,
that was
fine.
good. You really captured like the tone.
I can feel it when it happens.
Yeah.
Like I can tell, like, oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
So Walt, what does he do first, Adam? He glances at something.
The watch. Yes. So I looked into this. This is the watch that it was kind of an interesting scene in Breaking Bad. It's Walter White's birthday. I would guess it's his 51st birthday.
I think so, yeah.
He turns 50 in the series premiere.
Yeah, it has to be because he turns 52 when time has passed.
So it's his 51st birthday. And it's interesting. This is a sidebar. When Breaking Bad first aired, I was in high school still.
Yeah.
And I was watching it then. And 50 sounded old.
I know.
It now sounds young to me.
Yeah.
It's really odd.
I know. Yeah, it's like when I was a kid, if I were watching Better Call Saul and he ends up in prison, I'm like, well, he's almost dead anyway.
When it's like he can potentially have like another 30 years of prison ahead of him.
Yeah.
That's like a full lifetime for me.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, so sidebar. But yeah, 51st birthday. He and Jesse have some kind of conversation in their car. Jesse gets out and is like, oh, like, yo, by the way. And he gives him a gift. And it's this watch.
Yeah. So he glances at that, and the regret he
It's
might.
an expensive watch, by the way.
Is
it's
it?
like $800.
Damn.
I guess as far as watches go, that's not bad. Too expensive, but
Yeah.
to me, it sounds expensive.
Now, so the regret he might be thinking of there is that he gave Jesse up to the Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember where's Jesse? And Walt just points, and then the camera moves forward, and you see him hiding underneath the car.
Yeah.
With another iconic shot from that series. But no, that's not his biggest regret. Also, he has just in the last, I think, 24 hours, his son came at him with a knife, and he kidnapped his daughter.
Yeah.
But that's not what he regrets. None of that stuff. What he regrets is the company he got pushed out of, which, if he didn't, he would have had millions and millions of dollars.
And that's kind of, there's some degree of introspection there, because I do think like that is a major unresolved kind of trauma that he's had, and it's a huge driving factor behind all of this. But he comes up short here because he hasn't had the time to really process it. He hasn't gone to New Hampshire yet. He hasn't grown a beard.
Yeah.
So he needs those 6 months still to figure out his own problems mentally. But so this answer doesn't address his pride. He's making it sound like his biggest regret is that, first of all, he says they artfully manipulated me out of the company.
Yeah.
This is I think the first we're hearing that, and I think that's his own interpretation. I think it's I think, I need to go back and check, but I think from the flashbacks we saw and from what we understand, it's very likely it was his own pride that caused him to leave due to disputes with the co-founders.
Right.
He's twisting. Now maybe he's right, but it's also very, knowing him, it's possible he's twisting it to make it sound like people conspired against him. And his regret is that he didn't figure out a way to stay and to profit off of it.
Right.
And I do think part of that regret is because if not for that, I definitely wouldn't be down here with you.
He says that, yeah.
Yeah. So he does regret all the events that have happened since then and all the meth business, but it has less to do with how bad all that stuff was and more to do with how unfair and what a sting to his pride it was, a hit to his pride it was that he didn't stay at Gray Matter.
Right, because there would have been a charitable way to read this.
Yeah.
Of, I wish I'd stayed because then son wouldn't have come at me with a knife, wouldn't have done all this violent stuff. But I don't think he's connecting the dots there.
And he's not seeing it as like a bad decision he made ethically. So Mike gives an answer that's like, I did something wrong. His answer is more like, I let something happen to me.
Right.
When really, I think a lot of it had to do with like he and Gretchen had like some kind of romance, and she basically, I don't know what happened. I think it's fair to wonder maybe she like cheated on him with his friend.
Well, I'll say,
or she at least left him for the other like founder of the company or someone else who was involved, and I think that hurt him so much that he stepped away.
And I think that if I recall correctly, they did get into some of that detail on Breaking Bad.
When he was like, I think there's some chemistry here.
Right.
That scene?
I just, I don't actually know.
You see him and Gretchen, like working on, I can't figure out which one it is. You see him and Gretchen working on some kind of problem.
I remember that.
Or something, or he's showing her something on like a whiteboard or whatever. They're in a fancy looking place because it's the company, Gray Matter. But it's somewhat of an intimate scene, and at some point he suggests that there's chemistry between them almost.
Yeah. And I do feel like I remember part of him leaving had to do with things going wrong there.
Yeah, he was like scorned or like heartbroken a little bit.
Yeah. By the way, we will be rewatching Breaking Bad after this.
Yes.
So
So don't unsubscribe just because like Saulcast is,
Yeah, the Saulcast feed is still hot. So
yes.
So keep it on your app. And then Saul decides to open up. Well, it seems like Saul's going to open up, and then he gives his regret. He hurt his knee once during a slip and fall.
Yeah.
And Walt says, "So you were always like this."
Great line.
And it's the end of the scene.
Yeah.
So first off, I mean, a lot happening here. It shows you how these two men are broken, right? Walt is broken in the sense that he's so focused on bruised pride that he's not seeing all the damage he's caused to the people around him and to himself.
Yeah.
And with Saul, you see how he uses the game as a distraction from all of his trauma, right? He's focused on the slip and fall, and when he talks to Mike, he's focused on the money because he doesn't want to address his true regrets.
Right. But again, he's bringing it up. He's the one who raised the topic. I think he's looking for someone. He's almost asking for help. Like he wants someone to pull the truth out of him, but no one's been able to.
Yeah.
We'll see. Mike couldn't, Walter White couldn't, and Chuck couldn't.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, like his big regret really is that he wasn't able to like be honest with himself sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. This also, I mean, in case the subtext was lost on us, it also makes it very clear that the time travel and the time machine book are symbols for regret.
Yeah.
Because Walt points it out, which I say it kind of jokingly that they pull the subtext up, but I bought it. I saw Walt would cut through the BS.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved his frustration and just like being direct about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's appropriate that you have this time machine thing and that there's so much focus on regret because similar with just the idea of bad choice road, this entire series and all of Breaking Bad, it's about choices.
Yeah.
That is, if I had to summarize what makes this universe so special, it's about choices.
Yeah, the focus on consequences of choices and just following them down a long path. And I think another reason why the time travel metaphor is relevant is because this episode also makes it very clear that there are certain things you can't fix. Or you can't bring Hank back.
There are not just that things cannot be changed, but that there are cycles you can be trapped in.
Yes.
But I want you to finish that thought.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is, so you kind of get this question of what do you need to do to internally feel redeemed? How do you move forward with that?
Right, knowing that you cannot change events.
Exactly.
What's done is done.
Right, exactly. And then, yeah, of course, I think the theme of being trapped in cycles has become so clear the last
You've always been like this.
Yeah, you've always been like this. We'll talk about the Chuck flashback soon. The scene we talked about earlier with Mike, where he appears to be in a prison cell because the fence is in front of him, but it's not in front of Nacho's father. The idea of trapping yourself in your own prisons. Gus, why can't he hang out with David some more? He chooses to go fight that battle.
He has closed himself off from happiness in favor of vengeance.
Exactly.
And it's like he's doing it not even for himself, but for his lost loved one.
Yeah. And Kim put herself in a prison, but thankfully, at the end of this episode, I think we see she's freeing herself.
Yeah,
finally.
and one big insight I had on my rewatch was the way Saul is looking for some external force to motivate him to finally be honest. He's like looking for help without totally realizing it. He didn't get it from Chuck. He didn't get it from Walter White, which is shocking. Yeah. He didn't get it from Mike. He finally got it from Kim because she was able to do it.
Right.
She was able to, on her own, make a decision to get back onto Good Choice Road, to be honest, let justice be done, though the heavens may fall.
Right.
That's what she did. Now, she did it kind of late and in a way that ended up not being too harmful to her, but potentially could still be due to the civil consequences and whatnot. But the point is, he was looking. One of his big flaws is he's extremely driven by external approval, external motivation, and pushes from people. Like we always say, and I always forget which writer said it. Schnauz? Or no.
Gould.
Gould said, Saul Goodman wants love.
Yeah.
You can't get that. I mean, like, you could argue like maybe you can get that in like from yourself, but like he's looking for it from other people. He didn't get it the way he wanted to from Chuck, and not coincidentally, like after Chuck's death, Kim only grew in her like importance as a character and became more of a main character in the series rather than a supporting character. Similarly, I think the person he sought external approval from, external motivation from, and used as an example in life, or at least like a foil in life, switched from Chuck to Kim, and that was a major turning point for his character. It helped him become a worse person at first, and then it helped him become a better person.
Right. He needed to see somebody model the behavior for him.
Yeah.
But it had to be the right person. And it's this person that he loved and respected. And we'll talk more about that in a bit. Back to Walt.
Yeah.
I got to say, fun seeing Walt again.
Yes.
And I feel like with each of the Walt and Jesse cameos, it was like replaying the greatest hits. When we saw them together, we got to see them bicker.
Yeah.
And here with Walt, we get to see him obsessed with fixing something.
We see Saul Goodman in his underwear.
That's right. Yeah. Which, again, just feels so appropriate.
Totally.
And it's just so funny to imagine Walt and Saul as roommates.
Yeah.
And we get to see a little glimpse of that. And yeah, so you were always like this is part of that theme of
such a great line.
Yeah, being stuck in these repeating patterns.
And it's so believable to come from Walter White because he's just so blunt about this and analytical. Like he can put the pieces together quickly and understand patterns.
Yes, and I would say Saul, like you just said, that he's so driven by what other people think. And his self-image is so driven by other people's idea of him. This is another example of just every person he's ever respected, Chuck, Walt, pigeonhole him in a way that turns him into what they perceive him as.
Right. It just reinforces this whole notion.
Yeah. So again, just very artful use of this iconic character, Walter White. Then we get to the airplane on the way to Albuquerque, and
great shot. The transition of you see him like on the bed, and things become black and white, and you see the landscape.
That's right.
Of like New Mexico or wherever the plane is, and it looks like an alien planet. Like at first it looks like shots of like Pluto or something.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know where we were going with that.
It was cool.
Very cool. And Saul asks, Bill is on his way to the bathroom, so Saul flags him down, and he asks about Kim. Get more details on her confession, and he learns the DA will not go after her. And so Saul kind of has okay, so she'll be fine.
Yeah.
And Bill says, no. Cheryl Hamlin is already shopping for lawyers.
Not that she bothered to call me.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people were asking, like, is she going to go after Kim? This seems to suggest, yes, she will. So that says Kim will be hurt by her confession. Cheryl could go after...
She put something on the line.
Yeah, Cheryl can go after everything she has and everything she may have in the future. So yeah, what you just said, she did put something on the line, and that, I think, is the part that makes Jimmy think.
Yeah, and even if she wasn't going to get sued civilly, her reputation's ruined. As soon as this is public, I mean, she'll be seen... I don't know how famous of a case this is, or maybe there's a serial type podcast about it. I think you made the joke before, but... anyone who Googles her is going to realize, like, going to see this and think like she's a terrible person.
Yes,
borderline murderer.
Yeah, 100%. Though I think Jimmy's not processing all that. I think he needed to hear there's going to be consequences,
right? And that she chose it
exactly because that's what triggers him to start thinking. If it was she made a confession but there's no blowback, it didn't faze him. Once he hears that Cheryl's going to go after her, it's like we said earlier, he needs to see the behavior modeled. So
right, because in the scene with Chuck, which we haven't gotten to it yet, but Jimmy ends it with saying, like, when have you ever changed your path?
Right.
Kim actually did.
Yeah.
Right, and when he goes from like Chuck is my external like motivation to Kim is she actually did.
Right.
So it's a whole different story now.
Yeah, and I would also say that Jimmy has seen people do the right thing many times, primarily Chuck, but there was always an ulterior motive because so much of what
to make him feel superior, right?
Yes, or to put Jimmy down. Kim, maybe for the first time ever, he is seeing someone he loves and respects doing the right thing without an ulterior motive. And that's why it was so important that there were consequences, because it wasn't just an empty confession. She's going to take slings and arrows. So in the world of wolves and sheep, he thought Kim was a wolf, which in his model is to be respected. And then she does this. And I think suddenly the score changes. It's no longer wolves and sheep. You no longer measure everything by money or how much wrong you can do and still get a short prison sentence. Suddenly, I think winning the 7.5 year deal no longer feels right.
Yeah.
It doesn't taste good anymore. So he decides.
It was in that moment that he became James McGill.
Yeah. But actually,
right? All it took was Bill Oakley going to the bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, while Bill was in the bathroom, he did some introspection. And so when Bill comes back, he tells Bill that I just remembered something about the whole Hamlin thing. They don't know the half of it. Tell them that I want to give them some new info that'll make their toes curl.
Right.
Bill reminds him, if you do that, it's going to make things even worse.
You're going to bring the hammer down.
Yeah, on Kim.
Yeah.
And Saul says, oh yeah, it involves her. And Bill asks, what more do you want? Bill says,
really good ice cream.
Exactly.
Sorry, I stole the line.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So he says he got some great information to parlay with. And then we check in.
This is Saul Goodman's final, little trace, of his scheming is all right, I'm gonna get Kim there, and that's it. That character is dead and retired now.
Yeah, we get to see a couple of fun final schemes. For Kim, it's using her expired bar license. Yeah. And for him, it's this scam to get Kim there.
And I do think that part of that shows that even though they've basically broken good, it's not like they're completely different people now. Even people who are becoming better people or making good choices will bend the rules here and there sometimes. Even like in Harry Potter, those kids are the protagonists, but they break rules all the time.
Right. Yeah, and I think, a couple white lies are okay sometimes, right? It's okay to have a little bit of fun. So we check in with Kim, and she's at lunch, and they ask for her opinion. What did she think of that Middle Eastern restaurant, Top Cappy? And Kim almost offers an opinion on it.
Yeah.
So we start to see Kim's waking up a little bit.
Totally.
She decides to take off early. She heads to a place that offers free legal services.
And I'll mention, it was around this time where I just noticed just something in her her posture was improved. And I forget exactly what I said when we were watching, but I was like, Kim is back, or she's back to her old self.
Yeah.
And then you can tell by what she does next that's definitely true.
Yeah, that's exactly right. She very purposefully picked herself back up. Looks like she's back in the driver's seat
because she's been cleansed. She's unburdened, and she doesn't need to exactly punish herself anymore for what she did, because she came clean and she's willing to face the consequences.
Right.
So now she's allowed to actually allow some meaning back in her life. And where does she get meaning?
Helping people who need it, specifically in the law, right? She watches a conversation where a lawyer tells a woman, if he shows up, you keep that door locked. You call the police, and then you call me anytime, day or night.
Right.
Okay,
which is exactly the kind of thing she would have said.
Yeah, and it's also a perfect line that tells you exactly what's going on here. This woman is essentially being a hero. She's helping somebody that needs it. Yeah, and so Kim's there to volunteer, to answer phones. For me, that was one of the most.
She answers the phone really well too, for considering she doesn't work there and has no orientation. Yeah, I would be so much worse at that.
Yeah, the way you said that she kind of looks like Kim again. Here she sounded like Kim again. Yeah. And I would say that actually, even before Kim says anything, just watching that woman, keep the door locked, call the police, was one of the most emotional moments for me in the episode. Just because we've been in such darkness, we're watching the duplicitous side of Jimmy, this Saul being the worst he's ever been. And here we get to see somebody just doing something purely good. And I liked seeing Mike. You know, this is the example that popped into my head. I was trying to think, when do we see somebody do something good in this season? Mike standing up for Nacho's dad.
Yeah.
But even that is in the context of he's arranging for Nacho's death. And it's under the dark cloud of he's working for Gus and everything. Here, it was just a good thing someone was doing. And I missed that for Kim. And so it felt so good to see her doing that volunteer work. And I would say for me, I have no doubt that from here, she'll eventually, that's not going to be enough. She's going to be a lawyer again.
I think so. I mean, if she's allowed to be. And if not, because I don't know, maybe your prior actions will just like prevent her. Like,
it's true, yeah.
Rule her out from like joining the bar association or something. I really don't know how it works.
Yeah.
But at minimum, she's going to be involved in like the legal world doing good for others.
Yeah, she could run a place like that where she's hiring lawyers.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't legally represent you, but I can advise these folks here, right. You know. And then we see her, I could not think of Kim in doc review because you see her like putting documents away, but it's so funny.
She's like so happy to do it.
Exactly. It used to be like that was the punishment. It was the cornfield. That's where Howard sent her when she did bad, you know, when she let the Kettlemans get away.
Right, and that was a different Kim who it wasn't enough to just be contributing to like legal cases. Mm-hmm. She was striving for something more. Whereas in this case, she has no problem with it. First of all, because she probably misses it a lot.
Right.
But also, she firmly believes in the cause behind it, and it feels like purposeful and significant.
It's a lot easier to be a cog in a machine when you believe in what the machine is doing.
Right.
And it's clear.
And when you no longer have this sense of like, I deserve more. Right. I think she just feels lucky to do what she's doing.
Yeah. The thought occurred to me today that, you know, she's punishing herself, or she has been punishing herself by not letting herself do the thing she's passionate about. And it's a shame that the thing she's passionate about is helping people.
Yeah.
So, you know, you just think about what she's depriving the world of, you know, by punishing herself. Right. Then she gets a call from Erickson, mm-hmm. who is one of the few characters who appeared in Better Call Saul and El Camino, but not Breaking Bad.
Right.
Which I remember from our trivia night.
Yeah.
And she lets her know that Saul was arrested, but that's not why she's calling. He's giving some kind of testimony that affects Kim personally. And then we cut to Saul walking into the courtroom.
Yeah.
And you got to love the fact that they had to find an outfit mm-hmm. that in black and white you could tell was flashy.
It's all shiny. He has the ribbon from the Wayfarer crash.
That's right. Yep. Explain that for people who don't remember.
Well, when Walter White kind of semi-killed Jane, Jesse's girlfriend, by letting her choke on her own vomit after a heroin overdose, mm-hmm. her father, who was an air traffic controller, was in such grief and mentally disorganized that he accidentally caused a collision between two planes right over Albuquerque. Mm-hmm. And then everyone was wearing these ribbons like to commemorate and like pay their respects to the event. So his suit had that ribbon on.
That's right. And Saul had commercials or advertisements where
for a class action suit, right?
Yeah, if you were affected, you know, Better Call Saul.
Which, like, people could have been affected because there were like body parts and stuff like in people's yards.
Yeah. Now, why he had the ribbon on here?
I don't know exactly.
It's a little odd, right?
Yeah, and I looked into it. I did some Googling, and I didn't find any like good answers. I wonder maybe his old suit just still had it on, and he didn't see a reason to take it off. The event also wasn't that long ago in this timeline, probably like within the last... No, it would have been... No, it would have been like 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years, yeah.
So, you know, maybe it's like still on people's minds a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe it puts forth like, hey, I care about people.
Right.
Or maybe it's almost like an Easter egg for us.
Yeah, if he was still the Saul Goodman persona, is an easy answer. He has it on because he wants to project the image.
Right.
Look at me, I care about people. I would think now that he's James McGill, mm-hmm. he would take it off because it would feel dishonest.
Right.
But maybe it could be...
He's sort of James McGill pretending to be Saul Goodman.
Yeah, so if he wants to project that persona, he keeps it on. And he might just consider it part of his signature. I think the answer is that he's pretending to be Saul Goodman, mm-hmm. and he's doing the signature look.
Yeah, I agree with that. And this is interesting because for the entire time that he was Saul Goodman, that was less of a deliberate. I think when he first got into that persona, it was a deliberate choice, and he kind of crafted the persona, but he got lost in it, right? In fact, he directly alludes to that by saying, like, I'm the one that ran away,
Right.
which is like one of the final lines. He ran away in part by becoming Saul Goodman and losing himself in that role. Here, it's really interesting because he's consciously being Saul Goodman and playing the part rather than just getting lost in it.
Yeah, that's right. And the shot of him walking through the hallway in slow motion.
It felt like Maximus Decimus Meridius walking into the Gladiator, like walking into the Colosseum in Gladiator.
Yeah, and I would say the look, like if you told me you had footage of Al Capone's lawyer was arrested, like that's what it would look like.
Yeah.
It's playing this music, All Things Are Possible.
Mm-hmm.
Great. That might be the last time we heard an actual song on the show. I think about it.
Yeah.
I think it was all score after that. It's such a perfect song. I won't go through all the lyrics, but it's very biblical. I met God one morning. My soul was feeling bad. Heart heavy laden, I had a fire. Doubt ahead. He lifted all of my burdens. It's so appropriate.
Yeah.
And anytime you're talking about the Lord or God in a song, it makes whatever you're looking at feel important.
Yeah.
It's obviously
like epic.
It felt epic already. This just amplifies that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just wondering what the heck is going to happen.
And there is a spiritual element to all of this because, like, he is cleansing his own spirit. Like, he is basically like making his soul like naked for everyone to see, and accepting the consequences.
And at this point, though, you don't know for sure that's going to happen.
Right. There's a huge mystery here about what's going to actually occur.
Yeah.
What's this trick he has up his sleeve with Kim? Like,
right.
At this point, we as the audience are naive to that was a lie.
So you have this feeling that something very important's about to happen. Yeah. You don't know what's going to happen in that courtroom. You're worried. You're excited. And another iconic shot, I think, of him walking and that music playing. Yeah. So they're in the courtroom. The hearing's about to begin, and Saul says something to himself.
Showtime.
That's right.
It's showtime?
It's showtime. Yeah. Which, to me, that reliance on an old...
hands.
Yeah, he didn't do the hands thing this time. It had to be a little bit more... It's funny. As Gene, he did it just the hands, no words. Now he's doing it with the words, but no hands.
I think as Gene, he wasn't thinking. He was only acting. And now he's thinking and not acting.
Okay. I think this relying on that old habit, to me, says he's a little bit nervous.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And he's psyching himself up the way he did all the way back in episode 1.
Definitely.
Castellano makes introductions, which kind of a little funny thing, but when he starts naming everyone in the courtroom, I was like, they did a great job of picking names.
I was thinking that too.
They sound right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And he, of course, also points out that Marie Schrader and Blanca Gomez are there.
Which I think referring to them as victims is a little unfair, I guess. I guess the deal's already been made, so he's kind of admitting guilt. Never mind.
Yeah.
I forget that this isn't like a jury trial.
Right,
This
exactly.
is just like I don't really know what to call it.
And I think a hearing.
Yeah. I feel like a hearing is a broad category, but who knows?
So Saul gives his prepared "I am a victim" speech. Hood over my head, gun to my head.
Yeah.
I was terrified.
And I was like, so is he just going to repeat this again? And if so, what's the point? Because the deal's everyone agrees already. So there's so much, to me, there was so much tension watching this because now it feels even less genuine because it's this rehearsed thing that we're hearing for the second time. And I know there's a pivot coming.
It has to be, right? Yeah. And, he says, I was terrified, but not for long. That night, I saw opportunity, a shot at big money, and I grabbed it, and I held it tight. And for the next 16 months, my every waking moment was spent building Walter White's drug empire.
Now, before he says all this, he looks back at Kim.
That's right. He'll look back at her a few times. When he first comes in, he's looking at her. And definitely, I think he's looking to her for approval. He's looking to her because he misses her. And I think there's one particular look which is very important, which we'll get to in a second.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Bill very quickly tries to withdraw from the case.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Which I love that even in arguably the most important emotional moment ever on this series.
Humor.
Still humor.
And it's believable humor.
Yeah.
It's not a distracting joke. It's like, this makes sense that he would do this solely in his character, and it's really funny.
Yeah. It's not like
he's like, I quit. I don't want to be involved with this.
It's not like Will Ferrell just walked through the courtroom and
like slips on a banana peel.
Accidentally like hit his balls on one of them.
Yeah.
Like that little target that's pointing at Kim.
Oh yeah.
Is that too blue?
No, that was funny.
All right, cool. He admits that he lied to the government about having testimony which would hurt Kim.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted her to be there to hear his testimony. And he admits that he was an important part in every crime Walt's committed. And then he looks at Kim, and he looks almost distressed, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's not getting quite what he wanted.
Yeah.
And then he tells the judge one more thing. Is that what you were thinking of? This is the moment I was thinking of.
I think he looks at her. I could be misremembering. I think he looks at her and does this with his mouth a little bit, like,
okay.
like it's all like everything's out there. Take it or leave it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hope this is good enough for you.
Okay, so I don't know if we're talking about the same look then, because for me, at this look, he realized he hasn't gone far enough.
Yeah.
Because then he says, what happened to Howard Hamlin. This is my favorite part of the episode, actually.
Yeah. Okay. I know now I know what you're saying.
Yeah. What happened to Howard Hamlin? It was. I can't even. And you can see he literally can't say it.
Yeah.
He's hurt by what happened. He recognizes how tragic it was. Mm-hmm. He literally can't speak.
He's traumatized.
Yeah, and he knows if he tries to say it, he'll break down sobbing. He just can't do it. I mean, and I think the reason he admits what happened to Howard, and in a second he'll talk about Chuck, is because he looked at Kim and realized that, yes, he had to admit his role in what Walt did, but he's got to admit the rest too.
Right, because that stuff all happened after Kim was gone already. That's not the stuff that made Kim leave.
Mm-hmm. And he says, after Howard, Kim had the guts to start over. She left town, but I'm the one who ran away.
Yeah. For us, on rewatch, I had a moment where I was like, I paused and I turned to Daniel and I said, is that line cheesy? Yeah. And I thought about it some more and I thought, yes, it is a little cheesy, but Saul Goodman is, he performs and like he, even if he's telling the truth, he's still crafting his words very intentionally and like I think it's a little cheesy, but it's also true.
Yes.
So in the end, I like the line.
The Saul Goodman persona is essentially a metaphor for running away. Though it's not even a metaphor. It just literally is that.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime you take a subtext that's unspoken and then say it out loud, it risks being a little cheesy. Mm-hmm. But for the reasons you already said, works for me here.
Right. He's giving a speech, and he's very good at doing that. And he had a lot of time to think about this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. And to my brother Chuck, Charles McGill, you may know him. Mm-hmm. Cut to exit sign.
Even that, I was thinking about that. Him saying Chuck and then correcting himself or kind of reframing it as Charles, I think was an intentional maneuver too. Like that. Right. That's how calculated and deliberate this speech is. I think. It's first he establishes like the personal relationship and like the informality he had. Like his name is Chuck. But then also sort of paying respect to and like reflecting how highly esteemed he was in his career. He's like Charles McGill.
Yeah. I think that even saying you may have known him, like he probably was like, I'm going to say that, and then of course cut to the exit sign with the sound of the buzzing electricity, which not only is that, hey, this is like the specter of Chuck, it also mirrors the shot from when Chuck had his breakdown in court, chicanery. At the end of that breakdown, when he's just sitting in the chair, defeated, it cuts to that same shot.
Oh, do you actually see an exit sign, or is it just a similar angle?
Exit sign.
Wow.
Like it's from the exit.
That's cool.
I think it actually literally mirrors it, where one is from the left, one's from the right.
Yeah.
But it's basically exit sign in the foreground, looking at Chuck looking small in the distance.
That's
and you hear
awesome.
that buzzing sound.
That's so cool.
So it's essentially the same shot.
Chuck's ghost.
That's right. So just very powerful.
Chuck became an exit sign. Lalo became a fruit fly or a house fly. What did Nacho become?
Mike became the machine in the parking garage.
Nacho became a flower.
Yeah. What did Howard become? An ice cream.
Yeah.
So talking about Chuck, he was an incredible lawyer, the most brilliant guy I ever met, but he was limited. I tried. I could have tried harder. I should have. Which, you always try to point out that it was a two-way road. Like, Chuck screwed up. So did Jimmy. Like, if we can make all these excuses and say that the way Jimmy was raised, seeing the world as wolves and sheep, seeing his father get taken advantage of, the way he was raised turned him into Slippin' Jimmy. He couldn't help it.
Yeah.
Well, Chuck couldn't help it. And Jimmy could have recognized that. And he finally is right now. Chuck was limited. He couldn't reach out to me the way I wanted.
Right.
He couldn't not be rigid in the law. That's how he was.
Mm-hmm.
So amazing to see him finally admit all this. And then you can see, of course, Kim is very affected. I mean, she looks very moved. Ray Seahorn talked a little bit about the whole emotional journey her character was going on in this scene. She probably came in pretty upset. Like, why are you trying to hurt me right now? And then realizing it was a ruse. And then I think she gets to exactly where Jimmy wants her to be. Where she sees Jimmy McGill finally.
Yeah, and this is a nice parallel of the scene where Jimmy is trying to get his he's trying to rejoin the bar or like get his license to practice law back. And he gives this speech about his brother, and in fact, part of the performance was he like throws out his pre-prepared lines and gives other pre-prepared lines.
Right.
And Kim is like crying, and then afterwards he's like, "Those suckers bought it. They were crying, actual tears.
That one asshole was even crying."
Yeah. So this is very similar, except now because he just threw away his deal and totally trashed everything he had in front of him. Now Kim can buy it as genuine.
Yeah.
And so, of course, she's like very moved by it.
Yeah, 100%. And Jimmy goes on, I should have tried harder, right? Instead, when I saw a chance to hurt him, I took it. I got his malpractice insurance canceled. About to say something?
Yeah, what do you think he meant by tried harder? Like tried harder to connect with him and allow them to help each other out and influence each other, like put each other on better directions? Help him with his mental illness? Like,
I think it was mostly the former, is how I read it, because it comes right after saying he was limited.
Yeah.
So I think, and his limitation was, I think, the way he treated Jimmy, being rigid in the law, and I think he could have tried harder to be a good brother to Chuck and connect with Chuck.
And maybe accept those limitations and still get along personally.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
As kind of a minor point, but continues to get to the whole, just another theme in this show is the conflict and sometimes confluence of like personal and professional life, and how there's often no distinction, and it often creates problems. It created plenty of problems for Kim on her own, problems between Kim and Jimmy, and similarly problems between Chuck and Jimmy.
Right. And I think another theme connected to that is just the way that people not only affect each other but shape each other. Like, this show is so much about the relationships between Jimmy and Chuck, Jimmy and Kim and Howard, just how everybody shapes each other. So Jimmy got his malpractice insurance canceled. I took away the one thing he lived for, the law. After that, he killed himself, and I'll live with that. So that's the confession right there.
Yeah.
Finally taking responsibility. And
you've been waiting for that for so long. Like, more than most people, your refrain throughout all of Saulcast ever since that happened has been, we need him to reconcile with that. There will be no redemption for this character until he verbally says something honest about it.
Yeah. Literally, I've been waiting for that since we started Saulcast. And I mean, one of the first examples we saw of Saul Goodman as a coping mechanism was this. I've brought it up so many times, but go back and watch the scene where Howard visits Jimmy and Kim and says, I think Chuck killed himself, and I think it was my fault because I tried to push him out after the insurance premiums went up. And Jimmy, after being basically catatonic all episode, says, what was that about the insurance?
Yeah.
And Howard says, after somehow they found out about Chuck's meltdown in court,
Right.
they tried to raise his insurance premium, so I pushed him out.
Jimmy's the one who told them. Yeah.
That's right. So Jimmy seemed upset. He seemed sad all episode. Suddenly he wasn't. Suddenly he was happy-go-lucky, literally whistling, making coffee, feeding the fish. And that was it was not autopilot. That was an intentional maneuver.
Yeah.
I killed my brother. I'm not going to deal with that.
That was an avoidance reaction.
So let me stand up. Avoidance, that's right. And so that was a little taste of what was to come with Saul Goodman. After that confession, Saul goes to sit down, and Bill says, that thing with your brother, that wasn't even a crime. Saul says, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
The judge, Mr. Goodman, sit down and stay seated. And Jimmy says, the name's McGill. I'm James McGill.
Yeah.
So that's the moment you mentioned earlier. And then Jimmy looks back at Kim. She looks at him, and they hold that eye contact for a decent amount of time. So, yeah, they're truly looking at each other as Kim and as James. Like you said, they have bared their souls. And it's a great moment. And then flashback, the final flashback, the third ghost in this story of... what was the story with the three ghosts of Christmas past, present?
What was that? Christmas Carol?
Christmas. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Is it Jingle All the Way?
Yeah.
Was that Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
It was Scrooged with Bill Murray.
Oh.
Which was it was a modern retelling of this. It's a pretty good movie, actually. That wasn't intentional, by the way. It was kind of a nice thing that worked out. Peter Gould.
They just like to do things in threes, and people always prefer that.
Well, it wasn't even that. It was so this Chuck flashback was not initially going to be in the episode. Gould felt like something was missing. And so I don't know exactly when in the process. Like, I don't think it was like they shot the episode and then they added it. But just it was written, and then at some point this was added later, which is so strange. And then he just kind of pointed out in retrospect, it does feel like the three ghosts visiting Jimmy.
Yeah.
Walt, Mike, and Chuck. It is so strange to me because it's revealed in this scene that that copy of the time machine was Chuck's book, which to me adds so much.
Yeah.
And so it was the original plan that it was just a book Jimmy had. It would still signify regret, but I just feel like it adds something that it was actually Chuck's book.
Right, because it's like Chuck is the one who offered him the chance to like turn things around. In a sense, it wouldn't be like Chuck's doing, but he was the one who reminded him it's never too late.
And it also tells you that Chuck possibly had regrets about the way they treated each other.
Totally.
Because he had the book. And it tells you, I mean, I guess when you see Jimmy with the book and Jimmy's being regretful, of course you think, well, part of the regret is Chuck. But knowing that the book was Chuck's also just says, it's very pointed, that he is thinking about Chuck when he reads that book. So anyway, what actually happens in the flashback? This is either the first time or one of the first times that Jimmy's taking care of Chuck, bringing him supplies.
Yeah. And I read that based on the date, this is like the day before the first time we saw
the day before the pilot. So it's not based on the date.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't think it's based on the date. It's the fact
it's the newspaper, right?
Yeah, he says, hey, I think they're going to start having the Financial Times.
Yeah.
And then in episode 1, he's like, got the Financial Times today.
Nice.
Like it's a nice surprise.
Yeah.
So it would seem like maybe this is the day before the pilot. And Chuck says, you could have hired someone to do this. Jimmy insists, I'm going to do it. When Chuck asks why, Jimmy says, because you're my brother. Duh. You'd do the same for me.
And I actually don't know if he would.
Yeah, every time. So this is not the first time I've heard Jimmy say that. I've always wondered, I don't know. I think Chuck might have just hired someone.
Either that or he would do it, but maybe hang it over him a little bit. Not in an obvious way, but he would do it almost like out of like with a feeling of pity.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we saw, I think, in the winter flashback. They get along great.
Right, when he tucks him in and
when Chuck is taking
kisses
care of
him on the forehead.
Yeah, that's right. When Chuck is taking care of a drunk Jimmy.
Yeah.
When Jimmy's this bumbling.
That's like the nicest we've seen him.
Yeah, when he's a bumbling buffoon, someone who on the surface very clearly inferior, Chuck is very comfortable.
Yeah.
So maybe he would have taken care of him.
Right, and so Chuck always wanted to be like come out on top in that just in that relationship with his brother, which just further cemented the Saul Goodman like persona of like I'm gonna come out on top.
Right. Chuck offers that Jimmy could stay a while. They could talk. Talk about what? Chuck says, your cases, your clients. And so Jimmy kind of flippantly offers the different clients they could talk about, a bunch of bozos basically. And Chuck says they deserve a vigorous defense like anyone else. And Jimmy says, or maybe you just want to tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah.
And Chuck says, not what I had in mind. And then that moment of kind of opening up sort of passes, and he says, I'm hoping you didn't steal that ice from a motel ice machine.
Yeah. Which is, he doesn't have the opportunity to maybe criticize Saul's or Jimmy's legal approach or something, but he has another way to criticize him or remind him that he's a bad person.
And this is that limitation where he does not need to criticize him. Right. Nobody cares that he stole the ice from the ice machine. But Chuck has to point it out. So any hope of them connecting here, I think, is gone when Chuck is playing into the old pattern of putting Jimmy down. But Chuck does say, Jimmy, if you don't like where you're heading, there's no shame in going back and changing your path. And Jimmy asks, when have you ever changed your path? And Chuck very sadly says, we always end up having the same conversation, don't we? And Jimmy leaves. Chuck grabs his book, The Time Machine, and walks off. Right. Camera stays on the lantern.
And it's very telling that Saul's response is, when have you done it? Especially because at this point in his life, Chuck is like his own standard, like the person he can't stop comparing himself to, both because it's just built into his head now and because Chuck keeps reinforcing it. And so it's very telling that rather than think, okay, do I want to change my path? Am I dissatisfied with just representing kind of scum and like living in a nail salon?
Right.
Rather than thinking, how do I change this or how do I do more good in the world? His response is, this measure that I'm comparing myself to doesn't do it.
Right. So why should I?
It's all about external motivation and trying to like mirror or live up to whatever the other person's doing.
And it's the being stuck in a repeating pattern. These not only is Jimmy stuck in his ways, Chuck stuck in his ways, but between the two of them, they're stuck having the same conversation over and over, and they can't escape it. And I love the way Peter Gould described this scene. He called it two ships passing in the night. That there was a moment here where Chuck was willing to open up, but it was just not the right time for Jimmy. Because there probably is a time where if both of them were in the right mindset, Chuck could have made this offer to talk and Jimmy would have taken it. Like imagine
maybe they just needed a couple drinks.
Yeah, it may have helped.
Yeah.
Remember when Jimmy in Lantern, end of season 3, when Jimmy comes over to Chuck to apologize.
And he tells the truth. He admits what he did.
Yeah, and Chuck says, Jimmy, I've never really cared about you. Yeah. So, and that time, Jimmy was ready to open up. Chuck wasn't.
Right.
So if Jimmy was in that mindset here, it wouldn't have been two ships passing in the night. It would have been two ships, like when pirates are boarding.
Yeah.
So this is very sad. And Daniel pointed out that when Chuck says we always end up having the same conversation and Jimmy leaves, when you're back on Chuck's face, like the lighting and everything, he looks dead.
Yeah.
And all the life drains from his face. Yeah. It's disturbing.
It's similar to Gus's last appearance on the show. Just looks deathly.
Almost accepting I'm walking right back into this pattern, my own prison. And in both cases, we know something the characters don't, which is the path they've chosen to walk back down leads right to death.
Yeah, and in both cases, a fiery one.
That's true. Yeah.
And in general, like people's faces never look good when like lit from below like that. Like,
yeah.
Especially like he's it's so dark and he's just lit by a lantern.
Right. Yeah. So another just amazing scene. Yeah. Bringing it back a character we know for a flashback, but a very purposeful and one that adds something.
Yeah.
And a couple more things to say about it. I feel like the show is kind of handing out life lessons. And here I feel like the lesson is that there are many regrets you can have that you can do something about. That the Jimmy-Chuck relationship could have been rectified, but sometimes you get to a point where it's too late.
Yeah.
Obviously, in this case, once his brother died, it was too late. And one of the specific lessons is, don't assume the worst in people, the way Chuck always did about Jimmy. Or actually, in this scene, Jimmy is assuming the worst in Chuck. That in wanting to have that talk, there was an ulterior motive.
Yeah.
When there wasn't. Chuck literally just wanted to talk.
Right. It sounds like Chuck could tell that Jimmy felt what he was doing career-wise and like the people he was representing were not exactly like beneath him, but that he wasn't affecting like anything good in the world.
Right.
Or that it wasn't meaningful.
Yeah.
Chuck could sense that, I think, and was lending a hand.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's something about not assuming people's motives. Don't punish people for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Like if I offer to talk and, you get mad and say, well, every time we talk, you just criticize me.
Yeah.
Well, I tried to do the right thing and now I've been punished for it. I'm not going to do it again.
Right.
I think we do that all the time in life.
You and I especially.
Oh, yeah. You finally bring me flowers, and then I'm like, finally for once you do it.
Yeah.
So that's punishing you for doing the right thing. So, yeah.
Fine, I'll bring you more flowers, Gil. Sorry.
And then finally, I'll just point out, in case not everyone caught it or has heard people talk about it already, but if you need a reminder on where have we previously seen that time machine book, it was in the cold open. So when we're seeing the cold open of the season, when we're seeing Saul Goodman's house and everything being put away in boxes, a lot of that stuff was Easter eggs, things we'd already seen, like the Beanie Babies that he used to give to get special treatment at the courthouse. But a lot of them were pre-Easter eggs or Priester eggs, things we hadn't yet seen. Time Machine book was one of those. And then we saw it in episode 2 of the season, Carrot and Stick. It's on Jimmy's bedside table, so clearly he was reading it, presumably thinking about Chuck and thinking about regrets. And then, of course, we see it again here.
Yeah.
All right. We cut to the infamous scene, the prison bus. So Jimmy is on a bus. He's en route to ADX Montrose. So I don't know if you know, that's the Albuquerque. It's the Alcatraz of the Rockies.
Wow, I had no idea.
And Jimmy notices a bead of sweat on the back of a guy's head, which I actually read into that a little bit. I felt like now that he's, for the first time in years, he's not pretending to be anyone. He's just being himself. He's in the moment. He's present. So he's noticing
He's like a newborn baby, just like looking out at the world and like picking up on all the little things. Like I remember as a kid being more intrigued by just like little visual things and like new sights that, now we just take everything for granted.
Yeah, when I was bored in a car ride and it was raining, you would look at the little beads of rain.
Yeah, and then I remember we would watch them, and as the beads would go and gather more droplets and get bigger and bigger, we would start singing Macho, Macho Man.
Or you could look at like 3 different beads of rain and you put bets on which one's going to reach the bottom of the window first.
Totally.
Or you could move your head so it looks like they're moving.
Right.
And you play Mario in the car. You're trying to use perspective to move the raindrops and jump over cars.
See, I would do that I would have like my hands and make it look like there's a guy outside the car running with us, and I would have him jump over things.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Man, before the internet, those were the dark days.
Yeah.
No way to, if you didn't have your Game Boy, no way to entertain yourself on the go.
And when you did and it was night, you'd have to just wait to pass under a streetlight to do a little bit more.
That's right. So the guy turns around and he recognizes, hey, you're Better Call Saul.
Yeah, I love that. It's Better Call Saul.
Which is what you would say.
Yeah.
Because you don't leave the commercial thinking, oh, it's Saul Goodman. You just hear Better Call Saul over and over. It's Better Call Saul.
Yeah.
And then one of the guys who recognizes him, he kind of says it's sad. He's like, yeah, Better Call Saul. It's like a regret almost.
Yeah.
But then he just starts hitting the seat in front of him, and you get the Better Call Saul. You get the chant.
And it starts off really like slow and like it feels like it develops pretty organically after that initial push.
Yeah.
And this scene has a very surreal quality to it. It's totally breaking the fourth wall for the first time in this first and only time in this whole series. They're looking right at the camera, and there's especially one shot of the guy with the bandage on his face and this kind of funny smile. Everything's perfectly stable, but you see all the landscape passing by in the background, and he looks right at you, and it's like, it's Better Call Saul, right? And he has a smile, and it feels like a dream, and it feels like breaking the fourth wall, and it's really, really weird and almost like metaphysically out there.
Out of place,
yeah. And I think a lot of people didn't like, I don't know how many. It's just maybe they're just vocal, but some people didn't like this scene. I really liked it.
Pete Peppers didn't like it.
Really?
Calling you out, Pete.
He's entitled to his opinion.
I know. I'm only saying that because it's part of a joke. We talked about it on the live stream, and I was defending the scene, And he's like, I can understand why you guys like it, even though you're wrong. So
well, then you're justified.
just
I think,
returning the
going
favor.
after.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
So I think it was a really good choice to break the fourth wall here because, first of all, it's the finale, and there's something cool to me about everyone kind of saying "Better Call Saul" right to you as the audience. It's rubbing it in your face of like, this is who he was Saul Goodman for so long,
Right.
and like now it's a bunch of prisoners on their way to like one of the worst jails in the country, saying it, and it's like a cruel fate for him, right? And previously we'd heard Better Call Saul in the context of like flashy commercials, business cards, and like like his building, like his office and everything. Now we're seeing it from basically one of the worst possible outcomes for him, and all these people that like the kinds of people he was trying to prevent this fate for. You know? They're all saying it right to him and right to us.
Right.
Now the reason I think breaking the fourth wall here is really cool is because it's not just breaking the fourth wall in the context of the show. It's breaking the fourth wall for Jimmy McGill, because the entire time he was Saul Goodman, he was buying into the personality and forgetting himself. He ran away from himself and he lost himself in the role of Saul Goodman. And so when something breaks the fourth wall, what we mean is it's breaking through a facade and getting to the underlying truth, basically. And so I think for everyone to kind of be saying it right in his face, it's Better Call Saul. It's breaking down the wall that he had too. So the same feeling we get of like it's weird and out there, that's the feeling he's having too on this bus ride.
Right. And I would add a couple more things to that because I read it exactly the same way the first time we saw it. And I would say my read on it became a little bit more mixed on my second viewing, in the sense that I think there is also a little bit of positive mixed in there. So on one hand, I think he's it's like an actor that is always associated with the same role.
Yeah.
And so you can never escape. Like James McGill, he's taken off the Saul Goodman mask, but the truth is he'll never not be Saul Goodman.
The impact is done. The impact is there.
And anybody besides Kim who looks at him will always see him as Saul Goodman. I mean, all these characters who used to call him Jimmy and had to get used to calling him Saul, Erickson, Bill, both of them were, especially Erickson, there was the scene where she was like, oh, I'm sorry, Saul.
Yeah.
You know, Kim corrects her earlier in the season. They firmly see him as Saul Goodman now.
Right. They don't need any reminder.
Right. So this is a reminder that now everyone's going to see him that way. But there is something, it's kind of like the finger guns he gives to Kim at the end of the episode. Like there was some fun.
Yeah. He's being celebrated.
Exactly. Like he did have a good time as Saul, put aside all the evil he did. And it's going to protect him probably when he's in prison and people see him as Saul. He was a fighter for them.
Right. He's like the Johnny Appleseed of crime. Like he's like a folk hero.
Yeah. So I think,
and that's why he did come out on top. Saul Goodman came out on top. Even after getting caught, he got the most generous deal in the world, right? He just then decided to retire the persona. But it's not Saul Goodman who ended up doing all that time after. Yeah. Saul Goodman won, and then he became James McGill again.
Right. And I guess we should say this because I don't think we explicitly said it, but I love the fact that they took it away in the sense that Jimmy was caught. He didn't get to make the choice if I'm going to turn myself in. So they took it away, but they gave it back by having Saul win that great deal so that Jimmy had something he could give up. Right. So he could make the choice to pay the penance.
Yeah.
So I think that was important. What I was going to say before, too, is that in terms of giving us an unambiguous ending, but still having an ending, they gave us a little window into what his life is going to be like. Right. And that was important to me.
Yeah.
Because I could not stomach the idea of Saul goes to jail and his life is a living hell.
Yeah.
To me, that wouldn't really be fair. For all the reasons you pointed out before, he didn't pull any of those triggers. Yes, he was pulling the strings behind the scenes, but we know him so well enough to know that to the extent he can have redemption, he's doing it, right? He's taking the punishment. He made the confession. He's realizing the wrongness of his ways. He needs to be punished. I don't think his life needs to be hell for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And so I think this scene is part of telling us it's not going to be living hell.
Yeah, like he's not going to be a seen as like a public enemy in jail. Like
Right.
people are generally going to be positive toward him. And then we see more evidence of that as the episode continues.
It's kind of like he is getting exactly the right amount of punishment for this to be a bittersweet ending.
Yeah.
So here's another piece of that, of seeing how his life is not going to be awful. He's in the kitchen making bread.
So the transition to see the dough, like we've seen that so many times at the Cinnabon, and Daniel made a very good point yesterday, which was like there's basically no difference in a sense. There's no difference in his life before and after the events of this episode.
Right.
When he was Gene, he lived a dull existence. He was basically a prisoner in the sense that he couldn't make many friends or have a lot of personal attachments. He had to stay relatively anonymous, and he clearly didn't enjoy his life, and he lived in constant fear.
Right.
And just day to day, he was working in a bakery, essentially. No difference now, except he's in prison, but he can be honest about who he is.
Yeah, his mind is free.
Yes.
And the only thing I was going to add...
And he has Kim, kind of.
Well, we'll get to that. So not only to live in constant fear as Gene, but it's unpleasant to constantly have to put on a fake personality.
Yeah.
Like at least when he
mustache.
was... Yeah.
We can both attest to that, because during the pre-finale stream, I kept putting it on and taking it off because it was like getting uncomfortable.
Being Saul Goodman, I don't think is that hard for Jimmy. It's amplifying aspects of his personality that are already there. Being Gene means he constantly has impulses, constantly has things he wants to say, things he wants to do, and he's stifling them.
Yeah.
So his mind is not free. His mind is constantly on guard for paranoia from external threats, and it's on guard from the internal because he can't let anything out.
Yeah.
He can't let certain things in. He can't let anything out. So physically, he was free-ish, but mentally, he was in a prison. And now he's in physical prison, but his mind is free, which I think the show would tell you is a much better scenario, getting to live honestly. So Jimmy's making bread.
Yeah.
And the guard says, "Saul, lawyer's here." And another guy in the kitchen says, "I got you, Saul." Little fist
Pound
bump. And on his
go ahead.
No, you can say it.
And then he does like another little like, hey, like to another prisoner. Just,
Yeah.
You know, they're buddies.
He gives a fun, like, points his finger at somebody on the way out. So again, we get a little glimpse.
He's got to be popular among them. Like he fought for them his whole career.
Yeah. And even if he wasn't, he's just a really likable guy. He would make friends.
Yeah.
So we get that little glimpse into his prison life. He gets to be productive. He's making friends. But important to note, two people call him Saul. So continuing from the bus, we see he wants to be Jimmy.
Yeah.
The only person who will see him as Jimmy ever probably is Kim Wexler. And he goes to see his lawyer, Kim.
Yeah.
She says, "Hi, Jimmy." And turns out her Mexico bar card doesn't have an expiration date.
New Mexico, yeah.
Her New Mexico, yeah, it doesn't have an expiration date. So she was easily able to scam her way in. And I guess pausing there for a second, like, do we see any issue with that? She's scamming
Not
again?
issue, but more insight that, like, just because Kim has kind of redeemed herself doesn't mean she is a completely different person. Like, she's still someone who will bend some rules here and there, but overall her intentions are good, and I think she's not harming anyone with this at all.
Right.
But that doesn't mean she's like lost some of the traits that made her interesting. Yeah. And I think the same is true for Jimmy. And you wouldn't want somebody who never breaks the rules, right? We all bend things a little bit here and there. And everyone knows the scams I pulled to boost Saulcast's ratings in the Apple Podcast app.
Going to every Apple store you can. Positive review.
Yeah. On all the display phones. Yeah.
Oh, I did want to say,
it worked.
With you, yeah, that's right. With you,
most of the reviews are real, by the way. It's just when we were first getting started, I wanted to give us a little
it's like maybe
boost.
the first 5 or 6 are fake. I wanted to say that when you were talking about justifying the bus scene, nobody can accuse us of like bending into a mental pretzel to get that to work, because we went so hard at this show earlier in the season, so much so we got some 1-star reviews because people were like, "Stop complaining."
Yeah.
So now that we have total credibility when you compliment that scene, it's coming from a genuine place.
Totally. I mean, there was a period, I think it was shortly after the break ended, and a little bit before the break too, where I was having doubts about the show, and I was kind of worried about the direction it was taking. You know?
Yeah, and I would say more than won us back.
Yeah.
So Kim checks for guards out the window. When she doesn't see anybody, offers Jimmy a cigarette, and they backs against the wall next to each other, smoking, mirroring the shot from the first season in the HHM parking garage. They look at each other for a bit, and Kim says, "You had him down to 7 years."
Yeah.
Jimmy says, "Yeah, I did." And then Kim says, 86 years. Jimmy says, 86 years. But with good behavior, who knows?
He's proud that he got them down to that.
Yeah.
And he's proud that he turned it away.
Yeah. Both, I think, are
and
true.
And she's impressed.
Yeah.
About both things as well.
Yep, completely.
Right? And that's saying, similar to how she's willing to like bend the rules with her expired card and everything. You can change as a person and still be impressed when someone can manipulate the system and get away with something.
Yeah.
And it's even more impressive that he had it there and rejected it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so little is said in this scene. And it's kind of like, but everything that needs to be said is said. She calls him Jimmy. She's accepted him as, she told Jesse, right, when I knew him, he was good.
Yeah.
But now, even when she knows him in the present, he's good again.
Right. And she says that I love you and I'm going to stay with you while you're in jail this whole time and I'm going to try to get you out early.
Right. You all might have missed that part, but Adam heard that.
Yeah, definitely.
She said it with her eyes.
Yeah.
And it's just obvious she's taken off the hair shirt. She's not punishing herself anymore. Kim 2.0, the one that was with the yup guy, probably I guess she's still with him, but Kim,
I doubt that.
I mean, I would say if she's not still with him now,
she's gonna break up.
She's gonna break up. Yeah. That's kind of
or
what
just
I meant.
start ghosting him. That's how it works nowadays.
Which will be kind of awkward because he knows where she lives.
Yeah.
It seems like they host things together. But that Kim would never have pulled the scam with the bar license. So I think very clear that she's on her way back to the Kim we know and love.
Right. But not on the bad choice road as far as we know.
Important to note, whichever Kim she is after this is a different Kim from the one we knew before.
Yeah.
But the good parts of that Kim are coming back.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a little bit of color in this scene.
Love that.
Right? The flame of the cigarette. Which I think is just, there is a little color returning to their lives.
Yeah.
But not all the way.
Yeah, I mean, they're still like harrowed by all the experiences they went through. There's so many bad consequences that came from it, both for others and for themselves. You can't erase everything that occurred, but there is this spark of light for them. Now, I think it's interesting that it comes from the cigarette, which was always sort of this indulgence for them, and it's somewhat of a self-destructive act. But it's also like this little almost secret and like this private thing that they share. And that was what started their relationship in a sense. Like that's how we started. That's how we knew them in the very beginning. And the color is back there. To me, I take that as a sign both that like there's some color back in their lives, but also there's some color back between them. And I hope, like in my head canon, from what I hope for, give the romantic that I am, I hope that means like this is the potential spark of them getting like coming back together.
Right.
Which I don't think is impossible. People have, prison. Some people find that attractive.
It's true.
The whole prison thing.
All right, we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
So we're outside. Kim is on her way out. She sees people playing basketball, but Jimmy's just standing there staring.
And what's he wearing?
Like a sweatsuit?
Like a hoodie.
Right.
Which made me just visually reminded me of the old days with Jimmy. Like when he was Jimmy and like he would, he had that like University of American Samoa sweatshirt. Which I want to win in that auction.
I know.
By the way, I really want that. I'll wear it once and then I'll frame it.
It was jarring to see him in that outfit. Like I was like, that's not Jimmy.
Yeah.
I mean, or it's an older Jimmy. That's one we hadn't seen before.
Right. But it's like Jimmy looked like younger when he used to be in that. Now it's like a darker looking. He didn't look happy. He was just kind of watching her as she left. Yeah. Everyone else is like playing a game, and he's just standing there with his hands in his pockets and looking kind of, unhappy.
Yeah, it's like less expression than we're used to seeing on his face.
Yeah.
He gives her the finger guns, like we mentioned.
Yeah.
And she doesn't do them back. Now, they shot a couple versions of the scene, and they decided not to have her do them back to him because they were afraid people might misinterpret that as her saying, I'm back in the game,
like,
baby.
I'm going to get you out. No, yeah.
Yeah, now some people showed me a screenshot.
Yeah, I know what you're gonna say.
Where they're like, well, she does subtly do the finger gun
Right.
back.
The way she's holding her bag, you can kind of see her fingers like this.
Yeah.
Coincidence in my
Yeah,
opinion.
it looks. I tried to see it, and I'm like, no, not
If
at
it
all.
was a deliberate thing, it would have been only one finger. First of all,
Yep.
I think, and second, why would she have to like do it subtly or hide it?
Yeah, it just makes no sense.
Yeah.
Like, and when they do the close-up shot, yes, you see she's holding her bag in a very weird. It's kind of like this.
Yeah, like I hold
that.
stuff weird sometimes. Yeah, exactly.
So
That's
it's just
exactly
the
what
way she's
doing.
holding her bag.
Yeah.
Yeah, not that I even care that much about like whether.
No,
or not,
I mean,
you
if
know.
she did do it, I don't think it should change your interpretation too much anyway.
Yeah.
I think it would be easy for people to interpret that too deeply or take it too far and think, oh, she really didn't learn any lessons, or like Slippin' Kimmy is back, right? And
Yeah.
and they're just back on the wheel.
Right.
Now, there is a risk that things go that way. Like the two of them together, that's dangerous. That cigarette, that's the spark between them. That didn't always represent something good. Again, like it's a cigarette. It's not something we generally consider to be a healthy thing or something that's good for you. I don't think the show is implying this, but I also don't think we can let go of the possibility that they're showing that they're doing the finger guns. That was never a sign of good choices.
Right.
Right. So, and like we said, the spark about them and the interesting aspects of their personality are also the parts that could be dangerous. Now, hopefully they have them under control now. And I like to think that they do, especially like Jimmy made just such a drastic choice and such a
Right.
life altering decision for the sake of the good and for the sake of Kim's respect and love too. But I do think the finger guns, it's cool. It's interesting. It shows that there's still some like life between them.
Yeah.
But there's also a small element of danger.
So I would say I think the finger guns were just we had some good times. Like yeah, we got into trouble sometimes.
Totally, yeah.
But it was fun.
I think that's probably the best interpretation, and everything I'm doing is like just dissecting the crap
you're looking
out
at the
of it.
range of interpretation.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I would not say that you are wrong. If somebody saw this as a sign that there's still some danger in them being together, I wouldn't tell you you're wrong. But I would say my read is firmly neither of them will ever make those mistakes again.
Yeah.
In fact, if we revisited these characters and they got back together and did some bad stuff, I would consider that a retcon.
Yeah.
Like in my mind, these characters are at peace and there is no danger. If they were together, I see no risk in that.
Yeah.
That's kind of my read. But again, if you disagree with that, I wouldn't consider that wrong. I would say it's intentionally. You can only be so unambiguous. You can't have a character just say, like, by the way, I can promise I will never make the same mistake again. Even if they did say that, you wouldn't know if you could believe them. But that's the way I read it.
And I think that's probably the best interpretation.
Yeah.
And it's the simplest one.
Right.
And I think people do greetings to each other and have inside jokes with each other.
And
I think that's probably just what it is.
Right. One last kind of fun thing between them.
Yeah.
We see a shot from the side where they're very clearly separated and far apart, both behind two different fences. Kim walks off, and she keeps looking back over her shoulder.
Yeah.
And then we switch to her perspective, where we're seeing Jimmy, and the camera's moving. He's moving behind a wall, and just as he disappears behind the wall, guess I got what I deserved. Kept you waiting there too long, my love.
My love.
I think my love.
Yeah, I think you're right.
No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, but yes, he disappears behind the wall.
Yeah.
Cut to credits.
No music.
That's right. Yeah. Man, so that's the final shot. That's the end.
Yeah.
So that's the last time they see each other or not?
Nah, I don't think so. I think they become boyfriend and girlfriend again.
Yeah.
And have like stay together forever and have like conjugal whatever, you know. And maybe, I said this before, maybe through legitimate ethical means, maybe they can reduce the sentence enough that he can see daylight.
Right. Now, and I think, so whether or not they see each other again, my thought on that, I would find it very unbelievable if they didn't see each other again. I just don't see why.
Right, it's like he's there, she's like they're both alive.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to take a plane or take a plane. I like to think she actually moves to live close to the prison so that they can see each other often.
I wouldn't see. I don't know that I would go that far necessarily, but I also wouldn't say that's out of the question
Well, look, it's a love story that has not exactly a happy ending, and I want it to be a happy ending.
Right. To me, like saying it's the last time they see each other, that feels like, because you're viewing this as art, it feels like a nice artistic choice to say, and that was the last time they saw each other.
Yeah.
And then you go, well, wait a minute, why? Like, they clearly still love each other, I think. And yeah, again, they're both still out there. Like, why would she walk away and say, you know what? I really liked seeing him, but I'm never going to see him again. It just makes no sense to me.
I think they're very deeply in love. They have been, even throughout their separation, when he was just like doing all the Walter White stuff.
Yeah.
She definitely still cared about him. And even as late as when she was confessing about Howard, she covered up the fact that she'd been in touch with him.
Right.
She cares about him still. They never stopped caring about each other. So I don't see why that would stop now. And they both seem like the type of people who would not let his imprisonment like preclude them from having a relationship. Whether it's romantic or not, I like to think it is. But even if it's just, we are still in each other's lives somehow.
Yeah. And that's where you and I part ways a little bit, where I'm not ready to say that. I do think,
I'm just saying it because it makes me happy.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a possible outcome. I think another possible outcome is she is kind of rebirthed now as this new version of Kim that's once again willing to make choices, willing to follow her passions, helping people, possibly becomes a lawyer again or gets as close to it as she can. I believe all that. And in terms of turning a new chapter in her life, maybe she doesn't want to go back to Albuquerque. Maybe she loves Jimmy but says, I can't go back to that. But even having said that, I don't think that precludes her from once a year or every once in a while stopping in and checking on him.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say if she doesn't do that, shame on you.
Yeah.
Like, why? Then there are so many people that were part of an old chapter in my life. They're not around anymore, but I check in on them, see how they're doing.
Yeah.
So that's what I like to believe. One more thing. People saying that this is the last time they saw each other, to me that feels similar as saying the moment we saw between Jimmy and Chuck this episode, that was the moment Jimmy most regretted. That to me feels like another trying to add this artful choice to something.
Yeah.
But I think if you were to ask Jimmy, what is the moment you most regret? The answer would be different every time, because the regret is this big thing. I regret the way I treated Chuck. I regret getting Howard killed. And if he was going to use the mic, approach of let me roll it back and figure out the first,
he'd have to go back to like childhood.
The first time he stole from his father's till.
Yeah.
He stole from the store. So I don't think the show tells you that is the moment he most regrets. I think it would be one of many moments he regrets.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say you're wrong.
It's emblematic.
Yeah. And so I wouldn't say you're wrong for interpreting it that way. The same way I wouldn't say you're wrong for saying this is the last time they see each other. I would just say neither of those ring true to me in my interpretation, my viewing of the show. Do you want to hear what some of the people involved in the show say about the ending and what happens next?
Definitely.
All right, let's start with Gould himself.
Okay.
Showrunner. Okay. He says that Jimmy's going to be in jail for quite a while. Whether or not the full sentence, we can all fantasize and think about what might happen next. But he's definitely there for now.
Duh.
Yeah. So that opens the door to maybe he's not going to do the full sentence, right? Good behavior. Ray Seahorn, what did she say about it? This is not at all the ending that's written into the script, but because I'm a hopeless romantic,
yes,
Adam,
just like
you,
me.
I think that she also will apply that to how she handles her relationship with Jimmy. I think she's going to go through a very complicated process of trying to figure out if she can help decrease the sentence in a way that is still just.
Yeah,
let me take a sip of water. You can
Ray and I, we're kindred spirits.
Finish reading this. She liked a tweet of you. Remember that?
Yeah, a picture of both of us.
Yeah, we were wearing our jean costumes.
Yeah.
We tweeted it out. Like from Ray Seahorn.
She loves me.
Yeah, there you go. You can read the rest of that.
And I don't think that's the last time they'll see each other. Not by a long shot. But that's me. I think there's other people that will think that's the last day. That's it. But I don't.
That's right. And elsewhere, I don't have the quote here, but she does say, I think they still love each other. And she's like, and I'm not saying like, oh, they love it. No, like a romantic, deep love is still there.
That's what I'm saying, and I think she's right. And you may as well believe that because it's happy and makes me feel good. And then Vince Gilligan, what he said was, within a week of this, Jimmy gets shanked by a toothbrush in jail and dies.
Or he's brushing so vigorously, he accidentally stabs the back of his throat.
You know, that's actually a thing. Like, not with the toothbrush necessarily, but like kids are like, parents are cautioned, don't let your kid run around with like a straw in their mouth or anything like long, like in their mouths really, because it can like poke the back of their throat and cause a bleed. It can actually like hit artery, like your carotid artery, and like kill you.
Jesus.
And it can seem like a small wound at the time, but it's actually bleeding internally.
Life is stupid. Life is so stupid.
It's a miracle anyone like lives past like 2 years old.
It's the life lessons of Better Call Saul are like, don't get stuck in a pattern of behavior where you and your brother are, bring out the worst. The life lesson of Saulcast: don't poke yourself with a straw.
Yeah, don't brush too hard.
Yeah,
and it'll ruin your enamel.
You want to hear what Bob had to say?
Yeah,
Mr. Odenkirk. I think she comes to see him once a year, every other year at least. And I think he helps a bunch of guys in prison to get out who are innocent, or he helps shorten their sentences.
Yeah.
He gets treated really well. I think he's kind of the king of the prison because
like the Andy Dufresne.
Yeah. He's a really, really good lawyer and a great lawyer for the kind of people in there. So I guess for me, I probably lean a little more toward the Bob ending, where he's saying, they see each other every once in a while.
Yeah.
But I like to believe in the Ray ending and the Adam ending.
Right. So these are this is a good spectrum of possibilities.
Yeah. Now
and it's really not. It's still, I wouldn't consider it an ambiguous ending though, because like you said earlier, any show that ends with the main character still alive technically has ambiguity because the future is uncertain. But the range of possibilities are clear, and in the end, like the important things were resolved.
Yeah. The choice Jimmy made here, the choice Kim made. I think this show will live in my head longer than Breaking Bad did because the ending has less finality to it. I can think about where's Jimmy. I can't think, where's Walt, right?
Well, and also it's just, I think in general, like the human mind, like humans are like suckers for a good love story, especially like neither of us are big on like romance or anything. Like, I don't know. We don't consume any of that kind of content.
Wait, just to clarify, we are big on romance.
Yeah, we're very romantic.
Not in terms of the content we consume.
I buy Gil flowers every day.
There you go. Not often enough.
Yeah.
I want twice a day.
But so this like was a kind of a Trojan horse for a love story. And in the end, like you have these two souls that like have been through a lifetime, more than a lifetime's worth of terrible traumatic experiences and a whole spectrum of good deeds and bad deeds. And in the end, they come back and find each other. And in the end, they come back and want the best for each other. And that's like the feeling of that and the hope of that for, like, I think everyone kind of wants something like that for themselves. At least they want another person that they can feel a similar kind of like connection to, like through the universe, like no matter what's going on, there is this thing, this person that like we understand each other, we get each other, and we'll always want the best for each other, even if we're not physically with each other. And so like that's a thing that I think will stick with us.
Definitely.
At least with me.
Love saved Jimmy.
Yeah.
He loved Kim, and then seeing her model that behavior, she taught him how to confess and be a better person.
Yeah.
And they almost had a different ending. So this is pretty, I think I mentioned on the live stream that Vince Gilligan had considered an ending for El Camino where Jesse goes to jail. And that's the first time he can rest quiet, he's having an insomnia, he can't sleep, and finally he can relax.
Because he's kind of where he deserves to be, or like he's not afraid of the law coming after him. All these things are settled. Yeah.
Now, when he had this idea, Peter Gould and the rest of the writers had already come up with the idea of Jimmy ending up in jail. So he says, so Gilligan had that idea, and Gould says, we all discouraged it, confessed Gould with a laugh. We all said, oh, we like that other idea you have much better. I felt the icicles crawling up my back because I thought that was a better ending for us than it was for Jesse. Walt dies, Jesse gets away, and Saul faces the music.
Right. It's the same way as when we were predicting what would happen to him. Like, I think everyone felt like, well, Saul probably can't die because we already had Walt die, and that was the ending for that show. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And he says that felt very nice to me, a very nice trilogy. And he also says that in the early stages of brainstorming, Jimmy's song ended on a sadder and colder note. His reunion with Kim would have taken place before he went behind bars. So he gets into prison and is a lot less peace, and there's a lot more fear in prison. So I think they ended up finding kind of the perfect ending. Whew.
Wow.
Adam.
What more is there to say? We have dissected every inch of this thing.
We've looked under every rock. We've looked at every mossy underbelly.
Every orifice.
Anything left to say about the finale of Better Call Saul?
What an experience. Just such an amazing mix of everything you could ask for from any kind of content. Like an amazing story, so much to chew on and think about. I will continue thinking about this show for years to come. I'm going to rewatch it who knows how many times. And it's just like the perfect companion to Breaking Bad. And like together the two just form this amazing universe that I think it would work perfectly if this was the last word on the universe, but I also really want to return.
Yeah. I think I just came up with this off the top of my head. I think a great way to kind of sum up the whole experience. It's been quite a ride.
Yeah. I knew that was coming. It's true though.
Yeah, it's very true. I do think, gun to my head, we're going to revisit this universe at some point. Yeah. Well, I could say with absolute certainty you and I are.
Oh, yeah.
I'll mention it one more time. Stay subscribed to Saulcast because we're doing a Breaking Bad rewatch. And I'm going to make a couple promises right now that I didn't run by you.
Okay.
So we can cut it out if you don't like it. But here's the promise. As we go through Breaking Bad, we're going to report back on the Saulcast stream, and we're going to basically do one episode per season at minimum. But if you want more than that, on the Patreon, we're going to do intermittent episodes as well.
Yes.
I'm thinking
check-ins.
So like if you're on the Saulcast podcast, you'll get an episode about season 2, for example. We'll talk about the season overall. Over on Patreon, there'll be an extra episode where we'll pick what we thought was maybe the most important episode in the season or something and do a full recap and review. Something a little bit extra. So speaking of the Patreon, so what's going on there? We've got 3 tiers now, $2, $5, $10. $2 tier, you get exclusive content. That would include the Breaking Bad more detailed episode. And then it's just other random stuff. Bonus episodes on the podcast. Like we alluded to earlier, let her hair down. Stuff that we would be afraid to say on YouTube, we say over there. Adam said a swear word in the first episode. I might have bleeped it out. I don't remember. But that would never be allowed on the mainstream Saulcast. At the $5 tier, you get the exclusive videos, plus you get access to a VIP section of the Discord. If the rest of the Discord confuses you, as it often confuses me, in the VIP room, it's classy. You know,
it's like a golf club.
That's right. Not that the rest isn't classy, but
or a country club.
There's some great stuff going on in the VIP room. And then finally, for the $10 tier, you get the VIP access to the Discord, you get the exclusive videos, and you'll also get occasional live streams that are just for you. Yeah. So it'll be a more intimate setting. You can ask us some Qs. We'll give you some As.
You can insult us.
Insult us, sure. We'll take it. Whatever it takes. Yeah. What else are we doing? You want to hear us, if you want us to bring the Saulcast flavor to some other stuff, I want the instant take. I want the full take. Well, this Sunday, Game of Thrones coming back. Yeah. House of the Dragon. We're cautiously. I don't even know if I'd say optimistic.
No, not at all.
we're cautiously approaching it.
I'm planning to. I'm hate watching this until proven otherwise.
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah. They brought that on themselves.
I'll still try to be fair to the show and treat it kind of on its own terms, but I'm assuming the worst, hoping for the best. I'm just assuming the worst. But the point is it's going to be an entertaining show. Like our show's going to be entertaining. We're going to talk about it. We're going to react. We're going to recap. And even if you don't plan to watch it, you should watch us.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll probably have a bunch of Better Call Saul references in it.
Yeah.
My hope is that people who didn't watch Saul, they're going to get annoyed at us. Like, this is about Game of Thrones. Yeah. And I'll be like, Better Call Saul.
Yeah, it's like it's still Saulcast. We're just talking about a different show now.
Basically, yeah. So it premieres Sunday, August 21st. Mm-hmm. Sunday night, you'll get the instant take right after the episode. And later in the week, you'll get the full take.
Hell yeah.
And if you're watching on YouTube, it'll follow the same format. Instant take live over on the main One Take channel, full take on the podcast channel later in the week.
Yes.
I'll also just mention, in general, on the main One Take YouTube channel, I mean, there's probably people who listen to Saulcast, and they hear us mention One Take every once in a while, and they're like, the hell's One Take? Shut up.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. You should check it out. Yeah. There's a link in the show notes. Basically, on One Take, that's where you find my more produced, edited content. There'll definitely be a couple, at least, Better Call Saul related videos coming out in the next couple weeks. More video essay format about the show, and some other cool stuff coming there. And then on the One Take podcast channel on YouTube, these long form discussions always go there. But there's going to be some other long-form discussions about stuff other than Better Call Saul and even other than Game of Thrones.
Right.
So, for example, The Rehearsal, Nathan Fielder. Really been enjoying that show. Season 1 wraps up tonight, so we're going to do an episode about that. Mm-hmm. Never know what to expect.
Video games.
Talk about video games, too. Yeah. Super Star Wars.
Yes, for the Super Nintendo. I've been playing that. Have a lot of thoughts on it. I think it'll be fun to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. So, so to put it simply, if you are an eyeball user where you want to watch stuff, here's what you have to know. One Take, that's the main channel. Edited content goes there. Instant takes go there. I want to hear long-form discussions about Game of Thrones and other stuff. You go to the One Take Podcast YouTube channel. Okay, if you're an ear user, okay, and you just want to listen to us, here's what you have to know. You want to hear our Breaking Bad rewatch? Hear us talk about that. Make sure you stay subscribed to Saulcast. You want to hear us talk about House of the Dragon? Subscribe to our Game of Thrones podcast, yet to be titled. But we'll make sure you know how to find it. Don't worry.
There'll be a link or something.
And if you want to listen to us talk about other stuff, like you want to hear that rehearsal episode, subscribe to the One Take podcast. So Saulcast is for the Breaking Bad universe. The Game of Thrones podcast is about that. One Take podcast is for general discourse about other stuff.
Yes.
I don't think I can put it any simpler, right?
Yeah.
Anything else, bro?
Thanks everyone who listened. Whether you're a new listener or you're listening in the future, you know, like you're coming back and looking at this years from now, maybe. Thanks from the bottom of our hearts, right?
Yeah.
We started off, we were so happy when we had just our first couple of listeners, and this was an audio only podcast. And like I go back, if I re-listen to those episodes, to me it's like unlistenable. Just like the audio quality, it was like basically one of our first attempts at doing a podcast. We learned a lot along the way, and thanks to everyone who stuck with us.
I think those first like 3 episodes, you didn't even realize you had a nice mic in front of you. You didn't realize you were accidentally using your integrated laptop mic.
Yeah. So the good mic was doing nothing.
Yeah. On the El Camino live stream, like the thing that like kickstarted One Take's success, I had this microphone right here, but the entire time I was accidentally talking through my like AirPod microphone, earpod microphone. But yeah, I second everything Adam said. Thank you all for listening. I've said it a few times. I mean, I alluded to my finance career a couple of times, and I don't want to be too denigrating about it because, you know, kind of like Peter Gould said, if I go to make some new shows and it doesn't work out, I'm going to come back to the Breaking Bad universe. Mm-hmm. If this whole career here doesn't work out, I got to go back to spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So I liked a lot of that. I was passionate about building like really good spreadsheets.
But you're more passionate about this, and your data. You're so much happier doing this.
And this could not have happened without Saulcast. I've said it a few times, but One Take grew out of Saulcast. So everybody listening, you know, people who wrote in, people who took their time to write in with like well-crafted subject lines. You know I'm talking about you, Reginald.
Yeah.
And even when we weren't able to write back all the time or weren't able to always mention them on the podcast, you still did it. I read every single email. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And I hope to see you. I hope it's not over. Like
No,
I hope
it's not.
At least a percentage of you will stick around.
Hope all of you stay.
I hope, if we're hoping, I hope all of you stay. Follow us on our journey and keep the conversation going. With that, I'm Gil.
I'm Adam.
And this was Saulcast. I don't know if you caught that, by the way.
What?
I said this was Saulcast.
Yeah.
And you said is. Because you're the more hopeful one.
That's right.
So that kind of works perfectly.
I like that.
And this works as the after credits.
It does, unless you want to include the other thing that I mentioned earlier.
What was that?
We'll leave it to the imagination.
Okay. Oh, you know what else I might do?
Yeah.
Get the tears going a little bit. I'm going to put on like the first few minutes of our first ever episode. The thing is, though, it wasn't visual.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is both of us will just move our mouths.
Dub it. Yeah.
First, let's just talk about what we thought about the way season 3 kind of wrapped up and everything that happened in general. So we just watched that recap. I think
We just watched the episode. This is going to be our instant take, so you'll be hearing our raw, immediate reactions to having seen the episode. So these will be our raw, immediate reactions to having seen it, but make sure to check back later in the week where we'll have our full recap and analysis.
Kind of makes his face look squashed together, more narrow, and like his eyes are looking up and in toward each other. He looks like a fish.
We could pod out here from now on. All our YouTube videos, we get some space blankets, we can do it all from outside. We just had maybe our biggest moment in Saulcast history. And what just happened?
Rhea Seahorn just liked a photo of me
That's right.
on Twitter.
I think that we have officially
Cinnabon.
made it. See another side. Ray Seahorn, not Ray.
Ray.
This is the most important part.
Yeah, when that happened, my first thought was we keep going back and forth over what Kim's fate might be, and I started to think, you know what? Maybe I don't think they're gonna kill her. I think maybe there's some unpredictable reason that she just will not be part of Saul's future. But I think after this, I'm not necessarily betting on it, but the odds of her being a goner probably just multiplied by 10.
I doubt we'll be able to top Better Call Saul, but we're always looking for more shows we can sink our teeth into, more shows that have a community as smart as all of you folks, as smart as Better Call Saul fans. With that, I'm Gil.
I'm Adam.
I'm Alun.
And this is Saulcast. Instant take. Instant take. We forgot the most important part.
Yes.
I'm Gil.
I'm Adam.
I'm Alun.
And this is Saulcast. Instant take.
and with that, I'll ask you, better than Breaking Bad?
Yes.
I have to agree.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Well, but stay subscribed. Because like we said, we're going to do the Breaking Bad rewatch. And Adam wanted me to say that what we're talking about doing for Breaking Bad, we're going to rewatch and kind of talk about each season. We might do the same thing for the first 3 seasons of Better Call Saul. For the sake of completion. Never sat right with us that we didn't talk about those first 3 seasons on this podcast. All right? Anyway, get out of here. All right? Go outside. Get some air. Life isn't all about movies and TV shows.